I knew something was wrong the moment I opened my bedroom door. The room was empty. Not messy, not rearranged. Empty. My bed was gone. My dresser was gone. Even the framed photograph of my late husband James had disappeared from the nightstand where it had sat for 6 years. I stood there frozen, unable to understand what I was seeing. Then I heard my daughter Danielle behind me. "Mom, please don't panic. I can explain." But before she could say another word, I noticed a folded moving receipt sitting on the kitchen counter. I picked it up, and when I saw the name of the person who had signed it, my hands began to shake. Marcus Reed, James's former business partner, a man I hadn't seen in over 20 years. Why had he authorized the removal of everything from my bedroom? If you've ever had someone in your family make a decision for you without asking, you probably know how deeply that kind of betrayal can hurt. If this story already has you wondering what happened, stay with me, because the truth behind that receipt is much darker than Malika could have imagined. And if you're enjoying this story, please like this video and subscribe. It truly means a lot to me. I'd also love to hear from you. Where are you watching from, and what time is it there right now? And if you came home one day and found your room completely empty, what would you do first? Tell me in the comments. Mom, please sit down. I turned slowly toward Danielle. I was still holding the moving receipt in my hand. My fingers had gone cold. "Sit down," I repeated. "You emptied my bedroom while I was away, and you want me to sit down." Danielle sighed as if I were making this harder than it needed to be. "It wasn't like that." "Then tell me what it was like." She glanced toward the receipt. For just a second, something flickered across her face. Fear. Then it disappeared. "We had to move your things," she said. "There was a problem with the room." "What problem?" "Some repairs." "What repairs?" She hesitated. "Water damage." I stared at her. "There was no water damage when I left. I noticed it after you went to Aunt Evelyn's. My ceiling wasn't leaking. My walls weren't wet. And if there was water damage, why didn't you call me?" "I tried." "No, you didn't." "Mom, my phone was with me the entire time." Danielle folded her arms. "You don't have to interrogate me." I almost laughed. Interrogate her? My bedroom had been stripped down to bare walls. My personal belongings had been loaded onto a moving truck, and someone who had no business touching my property had signed the paperwork. And somehow, I was the one being unreasonable. I looked back toward the hallway. "I want to know where my things are." "They're safe." "Where in storage?" "Which storage facility?" Danielle hesitated again. "Why does that matter? Because they are my things." She rubbed her forehead. "Mom, you're making this into something it isn't." I stepped closer to her. "Then tell me what it is." She looked away. That was when I knew. My daughter was hiding something. I had spent 68 years learning the difference between someone who was confused and someone who was avoiding the truth. Danielle was avoiding the truth. Who hired the movers, I asked. She didn't answer. "Danielle." "I did." "Then why is Marcus Reed's name on the receipt?" Her eyes immediately met mine, and that reaction told me more than any explanation could have. "Marcus?" she asked. I stared at her. "Of course I know Marcus." She swallowed. "Dad worked with him. For years." "I know. And then they stopped working together." "I know that too." "Then why was he signing paperwork to move my belongings?" Danielle walked over to the kitchen counter and picked up a glass of water. She didn't drink it. She just held it. "Marcus was helping." "Helping with what?" "With everything." "That isn't an answer." "He knows things about the house." I felt something tighten in my chest. What things? Things Dad left behind. I went completely still. James. My husband. Even after 6 years, hearing his name, or even hearing someone imply that they knew something he had left behind, could still make my heart ache. What did your father leave behind? Danielle looked down. I don't know everything. But Marcus does. I said I don't know. You just said he knows things. She exhaled sharply. Mom, you don't understand everything Dad arranged before he died. I stared at her. There it was, the sentence that changed everything. Before James died, he had been meticulous about our finances. He had organized every bank statement, every insurance policy, every tax document, every deed, every investment account. He kept copies of everything. I even had a drawer in his office labeled in his neat handwriting. Important, Malika. I used to tease him about it. You act like you're preparing for the end of the world. He would smile and say, I'm preparing so you won't have to worry if something happens to me. And something had happened to him. 6 years ago, James had died unexpectedly after a short illness. I had spent months barely functioning after the funeral. Danielle had been there. She had helped me sort through paperwork. She had helped me clean the house. She had helped me answer phone calls when I couldn't bring myself to speak. I trusted her. That was why what I was seeing now hurt so much. Did Dad give Marcus permission to enter this house? Danielle shook her head. I don't know. Did Dad give him permission to move my belongings? I don't know. Did Dad give him permission to handle my property? I said, I don't know, Mom. Her voice rose. Mine didn't. Then why are you defending him? Danielle fell silent. I looked at the receipt again. Date was printed clearly. The move had happened 2 days earlier. While I was away. While I was helping my sister recover. Someone had known exactly when I would be gone. That thought made my stomach twist. I looked at Danielle, who knew I was going to Aunt Evelyn's. She blinked. What? Who knew I would be away? Mom, everyone knew. Aunt Evelyn fell. Everyone. Of course. When did you tell Marcus? Her face changed. Only slightly. But I saw it. I didn't. Then how did he know I don't know? I placed the receipt on the counter. I want the storage address. Why? Because I'm going there. Danielle shook her head. Not tonight. Why not? Because it's late. It's 4 in the afternoon. She looked toward the window. You should rest. I almost couldn't believe what I was hearing. You emptied my bedroom, moved my belongings, and now you're telling me I need to rest because you're upset. Of course I'm upset. Danielle's expression hardened. Mom, this is exactly what I'm talking about. What are you talking about? You get overwhelmed by having my bedroom emptied by everything. I stared at her. What does that mean? She didn't answer. Danielle? She sighed. Sometimes you forget things. The room seemed to grow colder. I forget things. Everybody does. Don't change the subject. You've been under a lot of stress. I'm asking you a simple question. I don't think you should be driving right now. I stared at my daughter. For the first time, I wasn't hearing concern in her voice. I was hearing control. And suddenly, several small moments from the past year began lining up in my mind. The time Danielle insisted on handling a bank letter for me. The time she said she needed to keep copies of my financial statements. The time she told my nurse I was having trouble keeping track of appointments. The time she suggested I give her access to my online accounts just in case. At the time, I had thought she was being helpful. Now I wasn't so sure. Where is my jewelry? I asked. She looked surprised. What my jewelry box? I don't know. It was in the bedroom. I didn't pack every little thing myself. Where are my husband's papers? I don't know. My photo albums. Probably in storage. Probably. She looked irritated. Mom, everything is safe. Then give me the address. Silence. I waited. Finally, Danielle walked to the refrigerator. There was a small white envelope attached to it with a magnet. She pulled it down and handed it to me. Inside was a storage facility address. I read it twice. Then I looked at her. I'm going. Mom, please. No, let me come with you. I shook my head. Why? Because I want to see my things. She didn't answer. I grabbed my purse from the chair. As I walked toward the front door, Danielle called after me. Mom! I stopped. Her voice had changed. It was softer now, almost frightened. Don't talk to Marcus. I slowly turned around. What if you see him there? Don't talk to him. I stared at my daughter. Why? She looked at the floor. I just don't think you should. I opened the front door. The afternoon air hit my face, and as I stepped outside, one thought followed me all the way to my car. If Marcus Reed had done nothing wrong, why was Danielle so afraid of me speaking to him? The storage facility was 23 minutes from my house, but that afternoon, the drive felt much longer. I kept both hands on the steering wheel and tried to quiet the questions racing through my mind. Why had Marcus signed the moving receipt? Why had Danielle lied about the water damage? And why had she looked almost frightened when I said I was going to speak to him? I had known Marcus Reed for nearly 30 years. He had been James's business partner when they owned Turner and Reed Construction. Back then, Marcus had been charming, confident, the kind of man who could walk into a room full of strangers and leave 10 minutes later with everyone believing he was their oldest friend. James had always been different. He trusted slowly. He listened more than he spoke. And whenever Marcus became too enthusiastic about an idea, James would usually wait until we were alone before telling me why he didn't like it. There's a difference between being persuasive and being trustworthy, James once told me. At the time, I hadn't understood why he said it. Now, sitting in my car outside the storage facility, I wondered if he had been talking about Marcus. The building was a large beige structure with rows of numbered doors. I parked near the office and walked inside. A man behind the counter looked up from his computer. Can I help you? My name is Malika Turner. I'm here about a storage unit that was rented under my name. He typed something into the computer. Unit 214, yes. He looked at me again. Do you have identification? I handed him my driver's license. He checked it, then nodded. I'm Derek Coleman. Are you the manager? Yes, ma'am. I need to see my belongings. Derek hesitated. Of course. He stood and grabbed a key ring. As we walked outside, I asked, were my things delivered here recently? Yes. When 2 days ago. My stomach tightened. Exactly when I had been away. Who delivered them? Moving company. Did you see the person who arranged the move? Derek looked at me. I saw several people. I mean the person who authorized it. He slowed down. There was a gentleman. What was his name? I'd have to check the paperwork. You already checked my identification. Please check the paperwork. He nodded. When we reached Unit 214, he unlocked the door. The metal door rolled upward with a loud scraping sound. I stopped breathing. There it was, my life, packed into boxes. My bedroom furniture stood against the back wall. My dresser, my bedside table, the upholstered chair where I used to sit every morning with my coffee. Even the small lamp James had bought me on our 10th anniversary. Everything was there, and yet seeing it like that made me feel strangely violated. A home wasn't supposed to look like a warehouse. I walked inside. My fingers brushed across the top of one box. A handwritten label read, Master Bedroom Personal. I closed my eyes. For 6 years, that bedroom had been my refuge. After James died, I couldn't sleep anywhere else. I had spent countless nights sitting in that chair holding one of his old shirts against my chest because it still carried a faint trace of his cologne. Now strangers had wrapped my memories in plastic and cardboard. I turned toward Derek. Who packed the movers? Was my daughter here? He checked his memory. I believe so. Believe I wasn't here the entire time. I nodded. Then I started opening boxes. My clothes were there. My shoes. My books. Family photographs. The quilt my mother had made before she died. But then I noticed something. The small wooden jewelry box was missing. I checked another box. Nothing. I checked the dresser. Empty. I turned to Derek. Where's the rest? He frowned. What do you mean? There were things in my bedroom that aren't here. Maybe they were moved somewhere else. No, I knew my belongings. I had lived in that room for 18 years. I knew exactly what had been there. I began listing them aloud. My jewelry box. Derek listened. My husband's document box. He looked up. What kind of document box? Brown leather. About this big. I held my hands apart. It has a brass clasp. Derek's expression changed. You're missing that. Yes. Anything else? The original deed to my house. He stared at me. And some banking documents. Derek slowly lowered the clipboard in his hand. Ma'am, those weren't listed on the inventory. What? He turned the clipboard toward me. I looked at the inventory sheet. Furniture, clothing, photographs, books, decorations. Nothing about legal documents. Nothing about jewelry. Nothing about the deed. Someone hadn't simply packed my bedroom. Someone had selectively removed certain things. That realization frightened me more than the empty room had. Who had access to this unit after the movers left? Derek hesitated. I don't want to give you information that isn't mine to give. These are my belongings. I understand. Then please tell me. He looked toward the office. Finally, he said, There was another visit. When later that afternoon. Who came? A man. What man? He said he was authorized to handle the contents. My heart began pounding. Did he give you a name? Derek nodded. I'd have to pull the access log. Please do. He stepped back toward the office. I followed him. Inside, he opened a file cabinet and pulled out a folder. He scanned the papers. Then he stopped. His eyes moved slowly across one page. Is something wrong? I asked. He didn't answer immediately. Finally, he turned the paper toward me. I saw the name. Marcus Reed. My mouth went dry. He came here? He came here, yes. After the movers, yes. What did he take? I don't know. You let him into my unit. He had paperwork showing authorization, from whom Derek pointed to the signature line. I stared at it. It was Marcus's signature. Again. The same name. The same confident handwriting. The same man who had signed the moving receipt. I felt a strange calm settle over me. Not peace. Something colder. Clarity. Mr. Coleman, I said quietly. What exactly did he tell you? Derek leaned back. He said he needed to retrieve one important family document. Did he tell you which one? No. Did you see what he took? I saw him carrying a box. What kind? Derek thought for a moment. Brown leather. My heart dropped. James's document box. The one I couldn't find. The one that contained years of records. The one James had warned me about. I looked down at the paperwork again. Marcus had entered my storage unit. He had taken something, and somehow he had convinced the storage facility that he had a right to do it. I asked the question that had been haunting me since I arrived. Did my daughter authorize him? Derek looked uncomfortable. Well, I don't know, but you saw paperwork. Yes. Whose name was on it? He turned another page. There was a letter, from whom I believe it was from your daughter. My chest tightened. Danielle? Yes. I closed my eyes. For a moment, I could hear James's voice in my memory. If anyone ever tells you they have authority over this house, don't believe them without seeing the original papers. I had forgotten those words for years. Now they were coming back with terrifying precision. I opened my eyes. Can I see that letter? Derek hesitated. I'd rather not. Please. He finally handed it to me. I read the first sentence. My daughter had written that Marcus Reed was assisting with the management of my property while I was temporarily unavailable. Temporarily unavailable. Those words made my hands tremble. I hadn't been unavailable. I had been at my sister's house. My daughter knew exactly where I was. She knew when I would return. And she had apparently told a stranger that Marcus had authority to handle my property. I folded the letter carefully. Mr. Coleman. Yes? Is there security footage from that day? He looked toward the ceiling. Possibly. Can you check? I'll have to see if it's still available. Please. He nodded. As he walked toward the office, I remained beside the storage unit. I looked at the boxes containing my life. Then I looked at the empty space where James's document box had been. For the first time, I understood something. Marcus hadn't taken random papers. He had taken something specific, something he believed could either protect him or destroy him. And I suddenly needed to know which one it was. I didn't drive home immediately. I sat in my car outside the storage facility with the engine off, staring through the windshield at nothing. Marcus Reed. The name seemed to echo inside my head. For 20 years, I had barely thought about him. Now, in less than 48 hours, his name had appeared on a moving receipt, an access log, and written by my own daughter. I couldn't ignore that anymore. I drove home just before sunset. Danielle's car was still in the driveway. For a moment, I considered driving past the house. Instead, I parked, walked inside, and closed the door behind me. Danielle was sitting at the kitchen table. She looked up. You went to the storage unit. It wasn't a question. Yes, her shoulders dropped. What did you find? Most of my things. She nodded. That's good. No. She looked at me. It's not good. I placed the letter Derek had given me on the table. Danielle stared at it. Her face changed immediately. You found that? Yes. She didn't touch the paper. I sat across from her. Why did you tell the storage facility that Marcus was authorized to manage my property? Danielle looked down. I was trying to help. That's not an answer. I didn't know what else to do. You could have asked me. You wouldn't have listened. I felt something inside me break a little. You didn't even try. She looked away. I waited. Finally, she whispered. Marcus said, Dad had an arrangement. What arrangement? I don't know all the details. Then why did you put it in writing? I trusted him. I leaned back. You trusted Marcus more than you trusted your own mother. That's not fair. No. My voice remained quiet. Then explain it to me. Danielle rubbed her hands together. He said Dad had been working on something before he died. Working on what? The house. My heart stopped for a second. The house. Yes. What about it? He said. Dad had concerns about what would happen if you ever couldn't manage it. I stared at her. Couldn't manage it. He said you were getting older. There it was again. That phrase. Older. As though growing older automatically meant becoming incapable. I am 68, Danielle. I know. I still pay my own bills. I know. I still manage my own bank accounts. I know. I still know exactly what belongs in my bedroom. She lowered her eyes. I know, Mom. Then why are you acting as if I don't? She didn't answer. I stood and walked toward the window. Outside, the evening light was fading over the backyard. James had planted those rose bushes with me 17 years ago. Every spring, he would complain about the thorns. Every summer, he would pretend he wasn't proud when they bloomed. That house wasn't just an asset. It was our life. I turned back toward Danielle. Did Marcus tell you he had authority over this property? Yes. Did you see proof? He showed me documents. What documents? I don't know. You don't know? He said they were from Dad. I shook my head. My husband was not careless with documents. I know. Then you should have asked me. I was scared. Of what? She finally looked at me. My situation. What situation? Danielle's eyes filled with tears. But she didn't cry. Things aren't good for me right now. I waited. Financially. I said nothing. She continued. I made some mistakes. What kind of mistakes? I owe money. How much enough? That doesn't tell me anything. She wiped her cheek. I thought I could fix it, and Marcus offered to help. She nodded. The room became silent. I understood more than she was saying. Marcus hadn't simply appeared out of nowhere. He had found my daughter at a vulnerable moment, and he had offered her a solution. But that solution involved my home. What did he promise you? I asked. Nothing. Danielle. He said the house could be protected. Protected from what? From being lost. I stared at her. You mean sold? She didn't answer. That was answer enough. I walked back to the table. Did Marcus tell you the house could be sold? He never said it directly, but you understood that's what he meant. I thought there might be a way to pay your debts. She nodded. I felt tears burning behind my eyes. Not because of the money, because my daughter had looked at my home and seen a solution to a problem that belonged to her. Did you ever plan to tell me yes when I don't know? After my room was empty, she flinched. Mom. No. Answer me. She looked down. I don't know. I picked up the moving receipt. Who gave Marcus permission to sign this? You did. I froze. What you did? When Dad's documents. I stared at her. Show me. Danielle shook her head. I don't have them. Where are they? Marcus has them. The words landed like a stone. I remembered the brown document box. Marcus had taken it. My daughter's explanation suddenly seemed much more dangerous. What documents did Marcus have? I don't know. Did you give him Dad's box? No. Then how did he get it? I don't know. I stared at her. You're lying to me. She stood abruptly. I am not. Then tell me the truth. I don't know what he took. You knew he was going into my storage unit. I knew he was checking something. You knew. She covered her face with both hands. I didn't think it would go this far. I went completely still. What does that mean? She lowered her hands. I thought he was just trying to help. By moving my bedroom, I thought it was temporary. By taking my husband's documents, I didn't know he would take them. By telling people he was authorized, I didn't understand what the paperwork meant. I looked at my daughter. For the first time, I wasn't seeing the little girl who used to climb into my bed during thunderstorms. I was seeing a grown woman who had made a series of choices. Bad choices. Choices that had consequences. And yet, I still loved her. That was the cruelest part. I loved her enough to want to believe she hadn't meant to hurt me. But love could not erase facts. Danielle, I said quietly, what exactly did Marcus tell you about your father? She hesitated. Then she whispered. He said, Dad didn't trust you to manage the property alone. My chest tightened. James said that Marcus said he did. Did you ever hear it from your father? No. Did you ever see a document signed by your father saying that no? Then why did you believe him? Danielle began crying. I wanted to believe him. I closed my eyes. That answer hurt more than any lie, because it meant she had chosen the version of the story that benefited her. I sat down again. Your father and Marcus had a falling out. I know. They stopped doing business together. I know. Do you know why? She shook her head. I did. At least I thought I did. James had never told me every detail. But I remembered the night Marcus stopped coming to our house. James had sat at the kitchen table for nearly an hour without speaking. Finally, he had said, some partnerships end because people want different things. Others end because you discover who the other person really is. I had asked him what Marcus had done. James simply replied, nothing I want you worrying about. I had respected his wishes. Now I wished I hadn't. I looked at Danielle. Marcus does not have authority over my house. She didn't respond. And neither do you. Her face crumpled. I know. No. I need you to understand that. I do. If you ever need help, you come to me. You don't give someone else access to my property. I understand. Do you? She nodded through tears. I stood. I am going to speak to Marcus. Her head snapped up. No. Why? Because he's dangerous. I paused. You just told me you trusted him. I was wrong. Then why are you afraid of me talking to him? She looked at me for several seconds. Then she whispered something that made the room feel suddenly colder. Because Marcus told me that if you started asking questions, everything would become much worse. I stared at her. What did he mean? I don't know. You do know. She shook her head. He said there were things about Dad's business that could hurt you. What things? I don't know, Mom. Did he threaten you? No. Did he threaten me? She remained silent. I didn't need another answer. I picked up my purse. Where are you going to see Patricia Bennett, who your father's old attorney? Danielle's eyes widened. You still have her number? Yes. I walked toward the door. Behind me, Danielle whispered, Mom. I stopped. I'm sorry. I turned around. I wanted to say that everything was going to be okay. I wanted to tell her that she was still my little girl. But I couldn't. Not yet. So I simply said, I'm going to find out what your father really left behind. Then I walked out. And for the first time since returning home, I wasn't afraid of what I might discover. I was afraid of what James had known all those years ago. Patricia Bennett's office was on the third floor of an old brick building in downtown Atlanta. The kind of building where the elevators moved slowly and the hallways smelled faintly of paper coffee and polished wood. I hadn't been there in 6 years, not since James's funeral. As I stepped out of the elevator, I suddenly felt like I was walking into another chapter of my life. A receptionist looked up. "Can I help you? My name is Malika Turner. I'm here to see Patricia Bennett." The woman checked her schedule. "She's expecting you." That surprised me. I hadn't told Patricia much over the phone, only that I had discovered something concerning about my property and needed to speak with her privately. Apparently, that had been enough. The receptionist pointed toward the conference room. I knocked once. "Come in." I opened the door. Patricia was sitting at a long wooden table, wearing the same serious expression I remembered from years ago. She had aged gracefully, her silver hair cut short around her face, and her glasses rested low on her nose. When she saw me, she stood. "Malika." We hugged. It wasn't a casual hug. It was the kind of embrace two women shared when they had known each other through grief. "I wish you were here for a happier reason," Patricia said. "So do I." She motioned for me to sit. I placed the moving receipt on the table. Then I placed Danielle's letter beside it. Patricia read both. She didn't speak. I watched her eyes move from one document to the other. Finally, she looked at me. "Where did you get this?" "The moving company. And this, the storage facility." Patricia leaned back. "Marcus Reed." "Yes." She removed her glasses. "Has he contacted you directly?" "Not yet." "Has he entered your home?" "I don't know." "Has he claimed to have authority over your property?" "Yes." Her expression tightened. "Based on what he says, James gave him authority." Patricia became very still. "Did he show you anything?" "No." "Did Danielle know?" "Then I need to ask you something important. What do you remember anything your husband said shortly before he died?" I stared at her. "I remember a lot of things. I'm asking specifically about your house." My heart began beating faster. I told her about the sentence I had remembered. The warning. If anyone claimed to have authority over the house, I was supposed to see the original papers before believing them. Patricia listened without interrupting. When I finished, she nodded slowly. "I was hoping you would remember that. What does that mean?" She stood and walked toward a filing cabinet. For a moment, she searched through several folders. Then she pulled out a thick gray file. She brought it to the table but didn't open it. This was left with me by James. I stared at the folder. When 6 months before he died, I felt the air leave my lungs. 6 months. Yes. Why didn't you tell me? Because he specifically asked me not to. Why Patricia looked directly at me. He told me that if everything went normally, you would never need to know about it. I frowned. And if things didn't go normally, then I was supposed to give you this file. My hands began to tremble. Did James know something was wrong? I don't know what he suspected. But you knew there was something. I knew he was concerned. About Marcus. Patricia paused. Yes, that single word carried years of unanswered questions. I leaned forward. What happened between... Patricia opened the file. James and Marcus were partners for almost 11 years. I know. They built a successful company. I know that too. But their partnership became increasingly complicated. How money? I swallowed. Was Marcus stealing from him? No. Then what? Patricia pulled out a document. Marcus wanted to expand faster than James was comfortable with. That sounds like Marcus. James wanted to keep the company privately owned. Marcus wanted outside investors. I remembered those arguments. Not the details, but the tension. The late-night phone calls. The business dinners. James stopped attending, the way he began locking his office door. Patricia continued. Eventually, James discovered that Marcus had been discussing several properties without James's approval. What properties? Properties owned by the company. Was my house one of them? No. I exhaled. Then Patricia added, but your house became relevant later. My relief disappeared. How James purchased the property before you married. I nodded. He put it in both our names after we married. Yes. So Marcus had nothing to do with it. Legally, no. Then why would he claim otherwise? Patricia closed the file. That is what concerns me. I looked at her. What did James leave in here? Patricia didn't answer immediately. Instead, she reached into the file and pulled out a photocopy. This is a property agreement. I read the first page. My name appeared. So did James's. I scanned the paragraphs. Nothing looked unusual. Then I saw another name, Marcus Reed. I looked up. Why is his name here? Keep reading. I did. The document didn't give Marcus ownership. It didn't give him control. Instead, it specifically excluded him from making decisions regarding the property. My eyebrows pulled together. Why would James include this? Because he anticipated someone might later claim otherwise. My heart sank. Did he know Marcus would try this? I can't say. You can say what James told you. Patricia looked down at the papers. He told me Marcus was capable of making people believe he had more authority than he actually did. I remembered James's old words. There's a difference between being persuasive and being trustworthy. Suddenly, they sounded less like a general observation and more like a warning. I continued reading. The document was signed and dated. James's signature was unmistakable. Patricia tapped the page. This is important. Why? Because it establishes the original agreement. But Marcus has another document. Have you seen it? No. Then don't assume it exists. I thought about Danielle. She had believed Marcus, maybe because he had shown her something convincing. But convincing wasn't the same as real. Patricia, I said, did Danielle ever contact you? She looked at me. The pause was longer this time. Yes. My heart dropped. When? About 3 years ago. Why? She asked questions about your estate. I stared at her. What kind of questions? She asked, what would happen if you became unable to manage your own affairs? I closed my eyes. 3 years ago, long before the empty bedroom, long before the moving company, long before the storage unit. Did she say I was becoming incapable? No. Did she mention Marcus? Patricia hesitated. Yes. My eyes opened. What did she say? She asked whether Marcus could help manage the property if you became unable to do so. I felt a deep ache in my chest. Why would she ask that? I don't know. Did she tell you about her financial problems? No. Did she tell you Marcus had approached her? No. I sat back. 3 years. That meant this hadn't begun last week. Maybe it hadn't even begun this year. I thought about every time Danielle had asked me to let her handle something. Every time she'd said, Mom, let me take care of that. Every time I'd thanked her. I suddenly felt ashamed for being so trusting. Patricia reached across the table and touched my hand. Malika, don't blame yourself. I should have noticed. You trusted your daughter. Yes, that isn't a crime. I looked at her. Then why does it feel like one? She gave me a sad smile. Because betrayal makes innocent people question themselves. Tears filled my eyes. I quickly wiped them away. I need to know what Marcus is trying to do. You will. How Patricia opened the gray folder again. There is more. She removed another envelope. This one was sealed. My name was written across the front. I recognized James's handwriting immediately. My breath caught. That's his handwriting. I know. When did he write that? About 5 months before he died. I reached for it. My fingers hovered over the envelope. For 6 years, I had believed the most painful part of losing James was knowing I would never hear his voice again. I was wrong. Sometimes the hardest thing was discovering that the person you loved had known something you never understood. I opened the envelope carefully. Inside was a single handwritten page. The first sentence made my entire body go cold. Malika, if you're reading this, someone has probably tried to convince you that I gave them authority over our home. I stopped breathing. I read the sentence again, then again. Patricia watched silently. My hands began shaking. James had written this before he died, before Marcus returned, before Danielle's questions, before my bedroom was emptied. He had somehow anticipated this. I continued reading. Don't trust anyone's explanation without seeing the original documents. My eyes filled with tears. Then I reached the final line. And whatever happens, don't let anyone convince you that protecting you gives them the right to control you. I lowered the letter. For several seconds, neither Patricia nor I spoke. Then I whispered the only question that mattered. Patricia, what did James know? She looked at me with tears in her own eyes. I don't know everything, but you know something. Yes. What? She closed the file. Malika, before I tell you, you need to understand something. What the person who emptied your bedroom may not have been trying to take your furniture. I stared at her. What was he trying to take? Patricia looked directly into my eyes. Control. The word stayed between us. Control. I repeated it quietly, almost as if saying it aloud would make the meaning less frightening. Control of what Patricia didn't answer immediately. She looked down at the gray folder James had left behind. Then she carefully closed it. Of your property, she said, but possibly more than that. I felt a chill move through me. My property, your home, your financial decisions, your ability to make decisions for yourself. I stared at her. That sounds like someone was planning to take away my independence. Patricia nodded. That is exactly what concerns me. I looked down at James's handwritten letter again. His handwriting was so familiar. I could almost hear his voice. For years, I had kept his notes, birthday cards, grocery lists, and little scraps of paper because they made me feel like a part of him was still around. But this letter was different. It wasn't a memory. It was a warning. Why didn't you tell me about this 6 years ago? I asked. Patricia took a breath. Because James specifically instructed me not to. Even after he died, yes. He knew something could happen. I believe he wanted to prepare for a possibility. What possibility? That someone might try to use his business history to claim authority over something that wasn't theirs. I thought about Marcus. Did James believe Marcus would do that? Patricia's eyes narrowed slightly. I can't tell you what James believed. I can tell you what he documented. She opened the gray folder again. Inside were copies of old business records, partnership agreements, property documents, correspondence, financial statements, and several pages containing handwritten notes from James. I looked at one of them. There was a date from almost 7 years ago, the year before James died. What's this notes James made during his final year of business? I began reading. The handwriting became less neat toward the bottom of the page. He had written about disagreements with Marcus, about financial decisions, about Marcus wanting greater access to company assets. Then one sentence caught my attention. Marcus believes confidence is the same thing as authority. I swallowed. That sounds like James. Patricia nodded. He was very careful with words. I continued reading. Then I saw another sentence. If anything happens to me, make sure Malika understands that she does not owe anyone control simply because they claim to be helping her. I put the page down. My eyes burned. Why would he write this? I don't know. You do know something. Patricia looked at me. I know James was worried. About Marcus, yes. About Danielle, no. That answer surprised me. Then why did Danielle contact you? Patricia folded her hands. That is where this gets complicated. I waited. 3 years ago, Danielle called my office. I already knew that, but hearing it again made my stomach tighten. What did she want? She asked about guardianship. The word struck me like a slap. Guardianship? Yes. For me? She didn't say it directly. What exactly did she ask? She wanted to know what would happen if an adult child became responsible for an aging parent's finances. I stared at her. And you told her I explained the legal process. Did you tell her she could control my property? No. Did you tell her she could sell my house? No. Then what happened? Patricia leaned back. She asked whether a family member could be appointed to manage someone's affairs if that person became unable to do so. I looked down. So she was already thinking about it. Possibly. Did she say I was unable to manage my affairs? No. Did she claim I was losing my memory? No. Then why ask? Patricia was silent. I don't know. I shook my head. She knew. Malika, she knew. My voice cracked. She had been thinking about this for years. I don't want you to assume motives we cannot prove. But the bedroom was emptied while I was away. Yes. Marcus signed the moving receipt. Yes. He accessed my storage unit. Yes. He took James's document box. Yes. And Danielle wrote a letter saying he was authorized to manage my property. Yes. I looked at her. How much more proof do I need before I admit something is wrong? Patricia reached across the table. You don't need more proof to know something is wrong. Then what do I need? Evidence. The word was simple, but it changed the way I thought about everything. I had spent the past 2 days reacting. Anger, fear, hurt, suspicion. Now Patricia was telling me that emotion wasn't enough. If I wanted to protect myself, I needed facts. Documents, records, names, dates, signatures. I nodded. What should I do? First, don't confront Marcus alone. I wasn't planning to. Second, don't sign anything. I won't. Third, change your financial access. I already started. Good. Fourth, Patricia looked directly at me. Find out exactly what he took. My thoughts immediately returned to the storage unit. The document box. Yes, if Marcus took it, he may have the original papers. Possibly. What if he destroys them? That is why we need to move quickly. I felt a wave of panic. Can he sell my house? Not legally, without proper authority. But what if he has forged something? Then that becomes a different matter. I looked at James's letter. Could there be another document? Patricia nodded. There could be. What do you mean James left more than one set of instructions? My heart skipped. Where I can't tell you yet. Why? Because I need to make sure we're looking at the correct version. I frowned. You're my lawyer. Yes. Then why are you being so careful? Because James was careful. That answer silenced me. Patricia opened a second file. This is a copy of the property agreement. I scanned it. My name, James's name, the legal description of the house. Then Marcus's name appeared, but it wasn't listed as an owner. It was in a section titled Excluded Parties. I read the paragraph twice. Marcus is specifically excluded. Yes. Why James requested that language. I looked at her when after their partnership ended. I felt a strange sense of relief. So Marcus never had authority. Not under this agreement. Then why is he claiming he does? Patricia's expression hardened. Because he may believe you won't challenge him. I thought about the empty bedroom, the missing belongings, the moving receipt, the story about repairs, the suggestion that I was becoming forgetful. Maybe Patricia was right. Maybe the real plan wasn't to steal the house overnight. Maybe it was to slowly convince me that I no longer had the strength to defend it. That thought frightened me. Not because I believed it, because I realized someone else might believe it. I stood and walked toward the window. Atlanta traffic moved below us. People were going to work. Cars stopped at red lights. Someone laughed on the sidewalk. The world looked completely normal. Yet my entire understanding of my family had changed. Patricia said, "Did Danielle know about this exclusion? I don't know." Did Marcus? Most likely. Then why would he try? Because knowing the law and you can manipulate someone are two different things. I turned around. What happens now? Now we document everything. Everything, every conversation, every document, every person involved, every time someone accessed your property. I nodded. I can do that. And Malika. Yes, don't tell Danielle everything you discover. I stared at her. Why? Because we don't know whether she is still communicating with Marcus. My heart sank. You think she might be? I think we should not assume anything. That was painful to hear. Danielle was my daughter. I had changed her diapers. I had stayed awake beside her when she had pneumonia at 6 years old. I had held her hand at her wedding. I had been there through every heartbreak. And now, a lawyer was telling me to consider the possibility that my own daughter might still be passing information to someone who wanted control over my home. I didn't want to believe it, but I had already learned that wanting something to be true didn't make it true. Patricia gathered the documents. Before closing the folder, she pulled out one final page. This is important. I looked at it. It was a note from James. Short, only 3 lines. If Malika ever discovers that someone has tried to move her belongings without her permission, and check the original property file immediately. My breath caught. I looked up. He wrote that, yes, when 5 months before he died. I sat down again. Patricia? Yes, how could he have known? She shook her head. I don't know. I looked at the note one more time. Then I remembered the brown leather box Marcus had taken. The box wasn't just old papers. It was the one place where James had kept documents he considered too important to leave in ordinary files, and Marcus had gone directly for it. I suddenly understood. Marcus wasn't searching randomly. He was searching for something James had hidden, something that could prove Marcus was lying. I stood. I need to go back to the storage facility. Why? The security footage. Patricia nodded. And Malika, I paused at the door. Don't go alone. I turned. I won't. But as I stepped into the hallway, one thought wouldn't leave my mind. If James had prepared for someone to challenge my authority over the house, Then he must have known exactly what kind of person could do it. And I was beginning to wonder whether the person who had frightened me most wasn't Marcus. It was the possibility that my own daughter had been helping him for much longer than I ever imagined. By the time I reached home that evening, the sun had already disappeared behind the trees. I sat in my car for several minutes before going inside. Patricia's words kept replaying in my mind. Don't assume Danielle is still communicating with Marcus. That was the hardest part. I could accept that Marcus might be trying to manipulate me. I could accept that he had lied. I could even accept that he had taken James's document box. But accepting that my daughter might still be helping him was different. That cut somewhere deeper. I walked inside quietly. Danielle was gone. The house felt strangely without her. I went into the kitchen, made myself a cup of tea, and sat at the table. For years, this had been where James and I talked about everything. Bills, family, vacations, the weather, our neighbors. Nothing had ever felt too complicated when he was sitting across from me. I looked at the empty chair where he used to sit. I wish you were here, I whispered. Then I remembered something. A conversation from nearly a year earlier. Danielle had been sitting at this same table. She had asked me almost casually, "Mom, do you ever worry about what happens to the house if you get sick?" At the time I had laughed. "I'm not planning on going anywhere." She had smiled. "I know. I'm just asking." Then she had added, "You should let me have access to everything just in case." I had told her she already knew where the important documents were. She had replied, "I mean everything. Bank accounts, insurance, property papers." I had thought she was being responsible. Now I wondered if that conversation had been the beginning. The next morning, I called an old family friend named Evelyn Parker. She had known James for decades. She had also lived 3 houses away from us for almost 20 years. "Malika," she answered. "Yes, Evelyn. Do you have a few minutes?" "Of course. Is everything all right?" I hesitated. "No, not really. I told her about my bedroom. I didn't tell her everything. Not yet. I simply asked if Danielle had ever spoken to her about my health or my ability to live alone." There was a long pause. That pause told me enough. "What did she say?" I asked. Evelyn sighed. "I didn't want to get involved. You're already involved if my daughter was talking about me. She said she was worried about that you were becoming forgetful." My throat tightened. "Did she give you examples?" "She said you had gotten an appointment." "I missed one doctor's appointment because I wrote the date down wrong." "I know. She said I had become confused about your birthday." "I didn't." "I know." "Then why did she say those things?" Evelyn sighed again. "She said she thought you were having trouble managing things." I closed my eyes. "Did she mention Marcus?" Another pause. "Yes." My eyes opened. "What did she say?" "She said Marcus was helping the family with some property matters." I stood from the kitchen table. "What property matters? I don't know." "Did she say anything about selling the house?" "No." "Did she say anything about me moving?" Evelyn hesitated. "She said you might eventually need a smaller place." I felt my stomach turn. "When?" "About 6 months ago." 6 months. I walked to the window. "Did she say I wanted to move?" "No." "Did she say I couldn't manage the house?" "She said you were tired." I almost laughed, not because it was funny, because it was so carefully constructed. I wasn't incapable. I was tired sometimes. I was 68. I had spent decades working, raising a daughter, caring for a husband, managing a household, and surviving grief. Being tired did not make me helpless. Thank you, Evelyn. Malika, I'm sorry. So am I. After hanging up, I stood there for a long time. Then I opened my laptop. I checked my bank accounts. Nothing unusual. I checked my credit card. Nothing unusual. I checked the property tax account. Everything appeared normal. But then I opened my email. There was an unfamiliar message from a real estate company. It had arrived 2 months earlier. The subject line was Property Consultation, Turner Residence. I stared at the screen. I had never requested a property consultation. I opened it. The message was brief. A representative thanked someone for discussing the potential valuation of my property. Someone. Not me. I immediately printed it. Then I called the number. A woman answered. Good morning, Southern Heritage Realty. My name is Malika Turner. I received an email from your company concerning my property. What property? I gave her my address. There was a pause. Yes, she said. I see the inquiry. Who made it? I can't disclose private client information. I am the property owner. Another pause. I understand. I did not request a valuation. I understand. Then who did? The woman sounded uncomfortable. I believe it was a gentleman. His name I'd need to check the record. Please do. She placed me on hold. I stood in the kitchen listening to soft music through the phone. When she returned, her voice had changed. Ma'am, the inquiry was made under the name Marcus Reed. My hand tightened around the phone. Thank you. I hung up. I didn't call Danielle. I didn't call Marcus. Instead, I called Patricia. She answered on the second ring. Malika, I found something, I told her. She was quiet for several seconds. That is important. He contacted a realtor about my house. Yes, he didn't own it. No, he didn't have my permission. No, then why would he ask for a valuation? Patricia's voice became very calm. Because someone considering a property transaction often wants to know its value before taking the next step. I sat down. What next step? Potentially a sale. My eyes moved toward the hallway, toward my empty bedroom. Suddenly, the missing furniture made sense in a different way. They hadn't needed my whole house empty. They only needed me emotionally unsettled. They wanted me to feel like my home was already being taken apart. Then perhaps the next document would have been placed in front of me. A power of attorney, a management agreement, something that looked harmless, something I might have signed because I was confused and frightened. But I wasn't confused. I was beginning to see the pattern. Patricia said, Do you have anything in writing? Yes. Save everything. I already printed it. Good. I also spoke to Evelyn. Your neighbor. Yes. She said Danielle had been telling people I was becoming forgetful. Patricia was silent. Then she asked, How many people I don't know? That matters. Why? Because if someone is trying to establish that you are incapable of managing your affairs, they may speak to other people first. My stomach dropped. So Danielle was building a story. Possibly. I stared at the kitchen counter. My daughter. My own daughter. I remembered every time she had said, Let me handle that, Mom. Every time she had taken paperwork from my hands. Every time she had told someone Mom's just been under a lot of stress. It had all seemed loving. Now it felt rehearsed. I asked Patricia, What should I do? Don't confront Danielle yet. Why? Because we need to know whether she is acting independently or whether Marcus is directing her. I nodded. I understand. Also, I want you to check something. What your house? What about it? Look for any paperwork you don't recognize. I spent the next 2 hours searching. Kitchen drawers, office cabinets, closet shelves, James's old desk. I found insurance documents, tax records, old receipts. Nothing unusual. Then I opened the bottom drawer of my desk. There was an envelope I had never seen before. No return address. My name was handwritten on the front. I opened it. Inside was a photocopy of a document. At first, I didn't understand what I was looking at. Then I saw my name. And beneath it was a statement suggesting that I had been considering transferring management of the property to a family representative. I had never signed it, but someone had attached my name to it. My hands began to shake. At the bottom was a handwritten note. Only 4 words. This is what they need. I stared at the paper. Then I noticed something else. The handwriting wasn't Marcus's. It wasn't Danielle's. It was unfamiliar. I immediately called Patricia. She answered. "What did you find?" I read the document to her. There was silence. Then she said something that made my blood run cold. "Malika, don't touch anything else." Why? Because if that document was deliberately left for you to find, someone may be trying to see whether you'll panic. I looked around my kitchen. For the first time, I wondered whether someone had been inside my house while I was away. Not to steal, not to break anything, but to plant something. Patricia continued. "We need to know who created that document. I understand. And tomorrow, we're going to find out whether Marcus has been telling the truth about James." I looked at the empty doorway leading toward my bedroom. "No," I said quietly. "What's wrong?" "I think I already know one thing." "What?" "Marcus wasn't trying to take my furniture." I looked down at the fake document. He was trying to create a reason for someone else to take my house. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the same things. My empty bedroom. Marcus Reed's signature. The storage unit. The brown leather box that had belonged to James. And now that strange document someone had left in my desk. By morning, I had stopped asking myself whether something was wrong. Something was wrong. The only question was how far it had gone. I called Patricia before leaving the house. "I'm going back to the storage facility," I told her. "I remember. I want to speak with Derek again." "That's fine, but don't accuse anyone yet." "I won't." "And Malika." "Yes, keep your emotions under control." I almost smiled. "I'm trying. I know. But remember, whoever is doing this may be counting on you becoming angry." She was right. So I promised myself I would listen more than I spoke. I drove back to the storage facility shortly after 9. Derek Coleman was behind the front desk when I arrived. He recognized me immediately. "Ms. Turner." "Good morning, Derek. Did you find what you were looking for?" "Not yet." His expression became serious. "I was hoping you weren't going to have more trouble. I need to ask you some questions about the man who came here after the movers." He nodded. "I figured that was coming." "You remember him?" "Yes." "Marcus Reed, yes." "Did he come alone?" Derek thought for a moment. "I believe so. When late afternoon, after the movers had left, yes." "Exactly how long after he turned toward his computer?" "I can check the access log. That would help." He entered a few commands. Then he looked at the screen. He arrived at 4:18 p.m. I remembered where I had been at that time. At my sister's house, helping her settle into bed. How long was he inside? 22 minutes. 22. Yes. I stared at him. What could someone do in 22 minutes? Derek shrugged. "Depends what they're looking for." That answer stayed with me. He printed the access record. I looked at it. Marcus's name was listed. Then another detail caught my eye. Why does it say authorized access? That was how the account was coded. Who authorized him? Derek looked uncomfortable. "The letter from your daughter." "Danielle." "Yes." I took a breath. "Can I see the letter again?" Derek retrieved it. I read it carefully. The language was vague. It never explicitly said Marcus owned anything. It simply said he was assisting with my property while I was unavailable. That ambiguity suddenly made sense. Marcus didn't need a document that clearly gave him ownership. He needed something that sounded official enough to make people stop asking questions. I handed the letter back. Derek, when Marcus came here, did he tell you what he needed? He was looking for an important family document. Did he mention my husband's name? Yes. What did he say? He said James had asked him years ago to keep track of some business records. I felt my stomach tighten. Did you believe him? At the time, yes. Why, he seemed legitimate. I nodded. That was Marcus. He didn't need to force people. He convinced them. Did he show you identification? Yes. Did he show you any legal paperwork? He showed me a copy of a property-related document. What kind I can't remember exactly. Was it signed? I believe so. By James. Derek frowned. I don't know. I thought about the fake document I had found at home. Perhaps that wasn't the first questionable paper Marcus had used. Did you make a copy? I don't think so. Is it still in your records? He checked. No. Why not? Marcus took it with him. I looked at him. He took the document. Yes. My heart began pounding. So the only record you have is the access log and the letter from your daughter. That's enough for now. Derek nodded. Then I asked the question I had been avoiding. What did he take? Derek looked at me. The brown box. Exactly. You knew? Yes. He lowered his voice. I'm sorry. You don't need to apologize. I should have asked more questions. You believed the paperwork. I did. That's what Marcus was counting on. Derek looked toward the storage hallway. There may be something else. What? The cameras. My heart jumped. Security footage. Yes. From that afternoon, if it hasn't been overwritten. When will you know I can check the system? Please. Derek disappeared into the office. I waited. The seconds felt painfully slow. 5 minutes later, he returned. We still have it. I almost exhaled in relief. You do? Yes. Can I see it? He hesitated. I can show you footage involving your unit. Please. He led me into a small office. A monitor displayed several camera feeds. Derek selected the date. The footage appeared. At first, I saw the movers. 3 men carrying boxes. Then my dresser. Then the mattress. Then the chair. Seeing my bedroom being dismantled on a screen was more painful than I expected. I watched strangers carry out the pieces of my life. Then the footage jumped forward. 4:18 p.m. A dark sedan entered the parking area. Derek paused the video. That's him. I nodded. Marcus stepped out. He was wearing a dark jacket and carrying a folder. He walked toward the office. The footage showed him speaking with Derek. Then they disappeared from the camera's view. A few minutes later, Marcus appeared again. He was walking toward my unit, alone. He opened the door. Then he went inside. I watched the clock. 4 minutes passed. Then 7. Then 12. At 16 minutes, Marcus came back out. He was holding something, a brown leather box. My hands tightened around the edge of the desk. That's it. Derek nodded. Marcus carried the box toward his car. He stopped once, looked around, then opened the trunk. He placed the box inside. But he didn't leave. Instead, he returned to the storage unit. My heart began racing. Why did he go back? Derek rewound the footage. Marcus entered the unit again. He emerged 3 minutes later. This time, he was holding a small envelope. I leaned closer to the screen. "Can you zoom in?" Derek tried. The image became blurry. But the envelope was clearly visible. Marcus placed it in his jacket pocket. Then he left. I stared at the screen. What was in that envelope, I don't know. Can you see where he went afterward? Derek switched cameras. We watched Marcus walk through the parking lot. He entered his car. Then he drove away. I sat back. For several seconds, I couldn't speak. Marcus had taken the box. And something else. "Derek," I said, "did he return the box?" "No." "Did he ever come back?" "Not that I know of." I looked at the footage again. There was something about the way Marcus moved that bothered me. He hadn't looked confused. He hadn't looked like a man searching for something. I had walked directly to the unit. He knew exactly where to go. He knew exactly what he wanted, and he had found it. "Can you give me a copy of this footage?" Derek shook his head. "I can't personally release security footage without authorization." "Then what can you do?" "I can preserve it." "Please do." "I will. Can you make a note that I requested it today?" "Yes. Thank you." I stood. Then I remembered something. Derek, yes. When Marcus came here, did he seem nervous? He thought about it. No. Angry? No. Confused? No. What did he seem like? Derek looked at me. Prepared. That word followed me all the way back to my car. Prepared. I sat behind the wheel, but didn't start the engine. James's warning returned to me. Don't trust anyone's explanation without seeing the original papers. Marcus had come prepared. He had a letter. He had another document. He knew about the storage unit. I knew which box to take. He knew where to find it. That meant someone had told him what was inside. I reached for my phone. I almost called Danielle, then I stopped. Patricia had warned me not to reveal everything I knew. So instead, I called Patricia. I saw the footage, and Marcus took the box. Are you sure I watched him carry it out? Anything else? He took an envelope. Patricia went silent. He took an envelope. Patricia went silent. What did you say, an envelope? Yes. What did it look like? Small. White. Did you recognize it? No. She exhaled. That could matter. Why? Because James sometimes separated original documents from copies. My heart started beating faster. What does that mean? It means the box may not have been the only thing Marcus was looking for. I stared through the windshield. Then, what was in the envelope? I don't know. Could it have been the original property document? Possibly. But he didn't find it. How do you know? Because if he had, wouldn't he have taken everything? Not necessarily. I gripped the steering wheel. What should I do? Come back to my office. Now, yes. Why? Because I think it's time I showed you something else James left behind. I closed my eyes. Another document, no. Then what? Patricia hesitated. A record of a conversation. I opened my eyes. What conversation? The last serious conversation James had with Marcus. My heart stopped. Patricia, you said James left notes. He did. This is different. Yes. How her voice became quieter. Because this time, Malika, you may finally hear Marcus in his own words. I didn't answer. I simply started the car. As I pulled out of the parking lot, I looked once in the rearview mirror at the storage facility. My belongings were still there. The boxes were still locked away. But I finally understood that the furniture had never been the most important thing in that room. The most important thing had been hidden among James's papers, and Marcus had spent 22 minutes searching for it. Patricia was waiting for me when I arrived. She had cleared the conference table completely. There were no ordinary files on it this time. Only one small digital recorder, a stack of documents, and a sealed envelope. I stopped in the doorway. "What is that?" Patricia looked at the recorder. "This is a copy of a recording James made." I slowly sat down. A recording of Marcus, yes. When, about 4 months before James died. I stared at the device. "Why didn't you tell me about this before?" "Because James asked me to keep it private unless circumstances required otherwise. And now they do." "Yes." Patricia pressed a button. For a moment, there was only static. Then I heard James's voice. My entire body went still. I hadn't heard his voice outside my own memories in 6 years. "Marcus, I'm not signing that." The recording crackled. Then came Marcus's voice. "You're making this more complicated than it needs to be." James replied, "No. You're making it complicated because you want something I won't give you." I closed my eyes. That voice, that familiar calmness, the same tone James used when he had already made up his mind. Marcus spoke again. "You can't keep everything locked down forever. I can keep my property out of your hands." There was a pause. Then Marcus said something that made my heart pound. "I'm not talking about your business." James replied, "Then we're done here." Patricia paused the recording. I opened my eyes. What did he mean? I don't know. "You've heard the entire recording?" "Yes." "Then what happens next?" Patricia pressed play. Marcus's voice returned. "Your wife doesn't understand these things." My breath caught. James answered immediately. "Leave Malika out of this. I'm trying to protect her. By telling her what she can and can't do, she needs someone responsible. She has me. And when you're gone, silence." I felt my fingers tighten. Marcus continued. "You think she'll be able to manage everything alone?" James's voice became colder. "She has managed more than you know. I've seen how overwhelmed she gets. She is grieving because her mother died." "No, I'm talking about the business. My wife has nothing to do with our business. She has everything to do with what happens afterward." James didn't answer. Marcus continued. "If something happens to you, someone needs to step in." James finally said, "No one steps in unless Malika asks them to." Patricia paused the recording. I stared at her. "That was it, no. Play the rest." She did. Marcus's voice sounded frustrated now. "You're going to regret making this difficult," James answered. "I'd rather regret being difficult than regret trusting the wrong person." There was long silence. Then Marcus said something so quietly that I almost missed it. "You can't protect her forever." The recording ended. I sat motionless. For several seconds I couldn't speak. Then I whispered, "He threatened him." Patricia shook her head. "Not directly. He said I couldn't be protected forever." "Yes, that is a threat. It could be interpreted that way." I looked at the recorder. Why didn't James go to the police? Because there wasn't enough to prove a crime. So he simply kept records. Exactly. I looked down at the documents on the table. James had spent his final months preparing for something. But he hadn't told me. Maybe he thought he could protect me without frightening me. Maybe he believed the situation would resolve itself. Maybe he never imagined Marcus would return through Danielle. That thought hurt. "Patricia, I said, "What does Marcus want?" She pushed the sealed envelope toward me. "I think this may answer part of that." I looked at my name on the front. Where did this come from? James gave it to me with instructions. I opened it carefully. Inside was a copy of a business agreement. I read the first page, then the second. Then I stopped. There was a clause concerning an old property investment. I looked at Patricia. "What is this?" "An agreement between James and Marcus from the final year of their partnership." I continued reading. The property wasn't our house. It was a commercial building that James and Marcus had purchased together. Marcus had wanted to sell it. James had refused. I kept reading. Then I saw a reference to a private loan. "What's this?" "That's the part Marcus doesn't want anyone to see." My heart began pounding. Why? Because James discovered that Marcus had transferred company funds into a private account connected to another investment. Was that illegal? Potentially. Did James confront him? Yes. And Marcus agreed to repay the money. Did he not? All of it. I stared at the document. How much Patricia told me the amount. I felt dizzy. It was enough money to explain why someone might become desperate. But what does this have to do with my house? Patricia pointed to another paragraph. Read that. I did. My house had been used as collateral in a proposed refinancing arrangement. My name appeared beside James's. I stared at it. That can't be right. It was never finalized. Then why is my name here? Because Marcus wanted the property included. But James refused. Yes. I looked at the document again. That's why Marcus wants control. Patricia nodded. If he could somehow establish authority over your property, he could potentially use it as leverage against the old business dispute. I felt sick. He isn't just trying to take my home. No, he's trying to use my home to solve a problem he created years ago. That's what it appears to be. I thought about my empty bedroom, the moving company, the storage unit, the documents. Everything suddenly looked different. It wasn't random. It was preparation. Marcus needed me to appear uncertain. He needed paperwork suggesting I was incapable. He needed people to believe he was acting on my behalf. And he needed access to the original documents. But there was still one question. Why? Danielle? Patricia looked down. I don't know. She has debts. Yes, Marcus offered to help her, apparently. So he found a way to make her believe that helping him would also help herself. That is possible. I shook my head. I don't understand how she could do this. Fear can make people make terrible choices. She is my daughter. I know. I raised her better. Patricia looked at me gently. Sometimes people make choices that don't reflect how they were raised. Tears filled my eyes. I looked away. Then something caught my attention. A handwritten note was attached to the back of the agreement. I pulled it loose. It was James's handwriting. Only one sentence. Marcus will eventually try to use someone I love to reach something he cannot reach directly. My heart stopped. I read it again. Someone I love. I thought of Danielle. Patricia watched my face. You understand now. I nodded slowly. He knew. He suspected. He knew Marcus would use someone close to him. Yes. I looked at the recorder. Did James ever name that person? No. Then we don't know if he meant Danielle. No, but she is the person Marcus is using. That's what the evidence suggests. I closed my eyes. I wanted to deny it. I wanted to say there had to be another explanation. But the pieces were fitting together too neatly. Danielle's questions 3 years earlier. Her conversations with Evelyn. Her financial problems. The letter authorizing Marcus, the empty bedroom, the moving receipt, the fake document, the storage unit, and Marcus's 22-minute visit. I opened my eyes. I need to confront Danielle. Patricia shook her head. Not yet. Why? Because now we know something important. What we don't know what Danielle has told Marcus. I stared at her. And if I confront her, she may warn him. My heart sank. You think she would? I think we need to be careful. I hated hearing that. But I knew Patricia was right. So I asked, what do? We secure your property. How first we'll verify every title and recorded document associated with your home. Then we'll notify the appropriate institutions that you have not authorized anyone to act on your behalf. And Marcus, we document his actions. What about the missing box? We pursue it through proper channels. I nodded. Then Patricia looked at me carefully. There is one more thing. What James left instructions regarding an emergency. My heart began racing again. What kind of emergency if someone attempted to interfere with your ownership of the house? I stared at her. What did he say? Patricia hesitated. Then she opened a drawer and removed a small key. It was old, brass, attached to a paper tag with 3 handwritten numbers. I looked at it. What is this? James told me that if you ever needed the original property records, this key would lead you to them. I frowned, where Patricia looked directly at me. The place where you and James began your life together. I knew immediately. Our first home, the small house we rented before buying the Turner residence. The place where James had proposed, the place we hadn't visited in years. Why would the documents be there? Because James didn't trust anyone who might search his office. I took the key. My fingers trembled around it. Patricia said quietly, Malika, if Marcus has the brown box, he may believe he has everything. I looked at the key, but he doesn't. No, and James knew he wouldn't. Patricia nodded. I stood. For the first time in days, I felt something other than fear. I felt determination. I wasn't going to chase Marcus. I wasn't going to scream at Danielle. I wasn't going to make reckless accusations. I was going to find the truth. And if James had hidden the original records somewhere, Marcus could never have expected then. I intended to find them. As I reached the door, my phone vibrated. It was a message from Danielle. Only 6 words. Mom, Marcus knows you found out. I stared at the screen. Then another message appeared. Please, come home alone. My blood ran cold. I looked at Patricia. She had seen my expression. What happened? I handed her the phone. She read the messages. Then she looked at me. Don't go home. My heart began pounding. Why? Because we don't know why Marcus wants you there. I looked at the message again. 6 words. A warning from my daughter. Or a trap. For the first time, I couldn't tell which. I stared at Danielle's message until the words blurred. Mom, Marcus knows you found out. Then the second message. Please come home alone. I looked at Patricia. I don't understand. You don't have to understand it yet, she said. You just have to avoid making a decision that could put you in danger. Danger, maybe not physical danger, but certainly legal and financial danger. I nodded slowly. Patricia took my phone and photographed the messages. Keep the originals, she said. Don't delete anything. Should I answer her not yet? What if she needs help? Then she can tell you where she is and what is happening. I hated the uncertainty. Danielle was my daughter. If she was frightened, every instinct in me wanted to go to her. But Patricia was right. Something about the message felt wrong. Not because Danielle had warned me, because she had specifically said to come alone. I had spent my entire life teaching my daughter not to trust strangers. Now I had to remind myself not to ignore my own instincts. I put my phone in my purse. What do? We go to the old house. I looked at the brass key in my hand. The place James and I lived before this house. Yes. Now, yes. We left Patricia's office together. She insisted on driving. I didn't argue. During the drive, I stared out the window thinking about the first house James and I had shared. It had been small. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom. A narrow kitchen with cabinets that never quite closed properly. We had been young and broke and happy. James had worked long hours. I had taken extra shifts at the hospital gift shop. We didn't have much money, but we had plans. He used to say, "One day we're going to have a house with a porch." And years later, he kept that promise. The Turner residence had a wide front porch where we spent summer evenings drinking sweet tea. It had become our home. Our daughter had grown up there. Our grandchildren had played there. And now someone wanted to turn it into a financial instrument. Patricia pulled into the driveway of the old house. It had changed. The paint was faded. The yard was overgrown. A new family lived there now. I stared at it. Is this really where he hid the documents James told me he kept something here? Why he knew the new owners were unlikely to know what mattered. We walked around the side of the property. At the back was a small detached shed. The lock was old. Patricia took the brass key from me. Try it. My hand trembled as I inserted the key. It turned. The lock clicked. I opened the door. Inside were old gardening tools, broken shelves, and several dusty boxes. Nothing looked important. Then I noticed a wooden workbench. Underneath it was a metal cabinet. I crouched down. There was a small keyhole. I looked at Patricia. She nodded. I inserted the brass key again. It opened. Inside was a sealed plastic container. My name was written on it. Malika. I stopped breathing. I lifted it carefully. There were several envelopes inside. Property records, original agreements, bank documents, and a handwritten notebook. James had preserved everything. The original deed, the original property agreement, the documents that proved Marcus had no authority over our home. I felt tears roll down my cheeks. I knew I whispered. Patricia nodded. He prepared. I opened the notebook. The first pages contained dates and notes about the business. Then I found something unexpected. A list of names. Marcus Reed, Danielle Turner. 2 other names I didn't recognize. Beside each name were dates. Some were years old. I looked at Patricia. Who are these people? She took the notebook. I don't know. James knew them. Apparently. I turned another page. There was one sentence. If Marcus ever returns, look at who is standing beside him. I felt a chill. Patricia. Yes, if Danielle isn't the only person involved, don't jump ahead. But James wrote names. Yes, and 2 of them are strangers. We need to identify them first. I continued turning pages. Then I found something that made my heart stop. A photocopy of an email from Marcus. The date was 3 months before James died. The subject line read, "Final Opportunity." I read the message. Marcus had written that James could either agree to restructure the old business debt or deal with the consequences. James had responded with only one sentence. You will never use my family to settle a debt you created. I closed my eyes. The pieces were becoming clearer. This wasn't a new conflict. It had been waiting for years. Marcus had lost control of the business. James had refused to give him the house. Then James died. Marcus waited, and eventually he found a way back through Danielle. I felt a wave of anger, but underneath it was something else. Sadness. James had carried this alone. He had protected me by keeping me uninformed. And now, 6 years after his death, I was finally reading the words he had never been able to say aloud. Patricia carefully photographed the documents. These originals need to go somewhere secure. Where my office? Can Marcus access them, not without knowing they exist? I nodded. Then my phone vibrated. Danielle again. This time, it was a picture. I opened it. Caught. It was my living room. Someone had taken a photograph inside my house. The angle was from near the staircase. The message beneath it read, "You need to stop looking." I stared at the screen. Patricia saw the photograph. "Malika, call the police." I shook my head. "Why someone has entered your house without permission? We don't know who. The photograph is evidence." I zoomed in. There was something in the background, a reflection in the glass cabinet. I looked closer. A man. I couldn't see his face clearly, but I recognized the jacket. Dark. Long. The same kind Marcus had worn in the storage facility footage. My heart began pounding. He was in my house. Patricia nodded. "That's what it looks like." I looked at the photograph again. Then I noticed something else. On the table behind him was a white envelope, the same size as the envelope Marcus had taken from the storage unit. I felt sick. Patricia. Yes, that envelope wasn't in the storage unit. What the one he took from the storage unit was already in his hand. I pointed at the photograph. This one was inside my house. Patricia's expression changed. "You think there were two I don't know. Then we don't assume." I stared at the photograph. Someone had entered my home. Someone had searched it. Someone had photographed it. And someone wanted me to know. That meant the message wasn't simply a threat. It was a warning. They wanted me frightened. They wanted me to stop. I looked at Patricia. "I'm calling the police." She nodded. We contacted the local authorities and reported the unauthorized entry. While we waited, I called my bank. Then my insurance company. Then the county property records office. Everywhere, I made one statement. I have not authorized anyone to act on my behalf. The words felt strange at first, then stronger. By the time we finished, I realized something. The more I spoke the truth, the less power Marcus seemed to have. He had relied on ambiguity, on confusion, on people assuming he was legitimate. But now, I was creating a record, a paper trail, evidence. When we returned to Patricia's office, she placed the original documents into a secure cabinet. Then she looked at me. "You need somewhere safe to stay tonight. I'll stay with Evelyn." "That works." I picked up my phone. There was another message. This one was from Danielle. "Mom, I'm sorry." I stared at it. Then another arrived. I never meant for this to happen. My eyes filled with tears. I wanted to call her. I wanted to hear her voice. I wanted to ask her why. But before I could respond, a final message appeared. "Marcus has the document he needs." My heart stopped. I looked at Patricia. "What does that mean?" She took the phone. Her face became pale. "Malika, What if he's telling Dell he has the document he needs? Then we may already be dealing with the final stage of whatever he's planning. I swallowed. What final stage? Patricia looked toward the secure cabinet containing James's original records. Whatever Marcus intends to do with your property. I thought about the empty bedroom, the missing furniture, the brown leather box, the fake paperwork, the realtor inquiry, the photograph from inside my house. Everything had been leading somewhere. And suddenly, I understood why my room had been emptied first. It wasn't simply about moving furniture. It was a message, a demonstration. Someone had wanted me to see what it felt like to lose control of my own space. They wanted me to believe the process had already started, but they had made one mistake. They had underestimated James, and they had underestimated me. I picked up my purse. I want to see Danielle. Patricia looked concerned. Malika, I won't go alone. She nodded, and I won't tell her what we found. Good. I looked at my phone one last time. Then I typed a response. Where are you? The reply came almost immediately. At home. I stared at the words. At home. My home. The house where someone had already entered without permission. The house where my bedroom had been emptied. The house Marcus wanted to control. And for the first time, I realized something that frightened me more than any document. Danielle was still inside, and I had no idea whose side she was on. I did not go to my house alone. Patricia drove, and I followed behind her. The entire trip I kept my phone in my hand. Danielle had stopped responding. That frightened me more than her earlier messages. I had spent the last few days discovering things I never wanted to know about my daughter. But I still couldn't convince myself that she had become my enemy. Somewhere underneath all the documents, lies, and missing belongings, I still believed there was a frightened woman who had made terrible choices and didn't know how to get out of them. I wanted that woman to be there when I walked through my front door. But I also knew I couldn't let my hope make decisions for me. When we reached my street, Patricia slowed down. My house looked normal. That almost made everything worse. The porch light was on. The curtains were drawn. Nothing appeared disturbed from the outside. Yet I knew someone had been inside. Someone had taken a photograph. Someone had searched through my home. And Danielle was there. Patricia parked across the street. Before you go in, she said, remember what we discussed. I know. Don't accuse her. I won't. Don't mention the documents. I won't. And if anything feels wrong, I leave. She nodded. We walked toward the house together. I knocked. No answer. I knocked again. Danielle's silence. I tried the door. It opened. My heart immediately tightened. I had locked it when I left. I looked at Patricia. She nodded toward the entrance. We stepped inside. The house was quiet. Too quiet. Danielle, nothing. I walked into the living room. Everything looked exactly as it had in the photograph. The sofa, the coffee table, the cabinet. But then I noticed something. One of the drawers was open. I hadn't left it that way. Patricia saw it too. Don't touch anything. I nodded. We moved farther into the house. The hallway leading to my bedroom was empty. I stopped outside the door. For a moment, I couldn't make myself enter. The room that had once been filled with my life was still bare. I looked at the walls, at the empty space where my photographs had hung, at the place where my dresser had stood. Then I noticed something on the floor, a single photograph. I crouched carefully without touching it. It was a picture of James and me. We were standing on the porch of our first house. Young, happy, holding hands. I felt tears come to my eyes. Why would someone leave this here? I whispered. Patricia didn't answer. Then we heard a sound, a door closing upstairs. I froze. Someone is here. Patricia immediately stepped closer. Stay behind me. We moved toward the stairs. Danielle, I called. No answer. Another sound. Footsteps. Slow. Then Danielle appeared at the top of the stairs. Her face was pale. She looked exhausted. Her hair was disheveled, and there were dark circles beneath her eyes. When she saw Patricia, she stopped. You brought her. I wasn't going to come alone, I said. Danielle looked at me. I told you to come alone. I know. You weren't supposed to bring anyone. I wasn't going to walk into my own house without protection. Her eyes filled with tears. Mom, you don't understand. Then explain it to me. She came down the stairs slowly. When she reached the bottom, she looked at Patricia. I need to talk to my mother privately. Patricia shook her head. No. Danielle's face tightened. Why? Because we don't know who else is involved. Danielle looked at me. She's making this worse. No, I said. The people who emptied my bedroom made this worse. She looked away. I took a breath. Danielle, I need the truth. I know. Did Marcus enter this house? She didn't answer. Danielle, yes. My heart sank. When today, why he was looking for something. What I don't know? You're lying. She started crying. I swear I don't know. What was he looking for Dad's papers? I looked at Patricia. She remained silent. Did you let him in? Yes. The word broke something inside me. You gave him access to my house. I thought he was going to fix this. Fix what? Everything? What does that mean? Danielle wiped her tears. I owe money. I know. Because you told me. She looked surprised. I told you because I thought you would help me. I would have. I was ashamed. You should have come to me. I was scared. Of me? No. Then who? She looked toward the window. Marcus. My heart tightened. What did he do? He didn't threaten me. Then why are you afraid he knows things? What things about Dad? I stepped closer. What does he know? Danielle shook her head. He said Dad left him responsible for certain matters. He lied. I didn't know that. You had years to ask Patricia. I was afraid. Why? Because Marcus told me Dad had been hiding money. I stared at her. What he said Dad had taken money from the business. That is a lie. I didn't know. Did you believe him at first? I felt a wave of anger. Why? Because he showed me documents. What documents I don't know. You saw them. Yes. What did they say? They made it look like Dad owed him money. I closed my eyes. Marcus had found the perfect weakness. He had used Danielle's financial problems to make her believe he was owed something. Then he had convinced her that my house was somehow connected to that debt. Did he tell you he could solve your debts if you helped him? Danielle nodded. My chest hurt. What did he ask you to do? Nothing at first. At first, he asked questions. What questions about you? I went still. What kind of questions? Your routines. My routines when you left the house. Where you kept documents. Who had keys. Whether you had changed your will. My face went cold. And you answered him, I didn't think it mattered. It mattered. I know. Her voice broke. She covered her face. I know now. Patricia stepped forward. Danielle, when did Marcus first ask about Malika's documents about a year ago? I looked at her. A year? Yes, and you didn't tell me I was ashamed. I shook my head. Danielle, this isn't only about shame anymore. I know. Did you ever give him my financial records? She hesitated. That hesitation was enough. Did you? Yes. I closed my eyes. Which ones? Bank statements. Anything else? Insurance information. Property records. Numbered. I opened my eyes. Are you sure? Yes. What about Dad's documents, Num? Then how did Marcus get the brown box? I don't know. I believed her, at least about that. She had not known where James kept the original records. Marcus had. That meant there were still things Danielle didn't know. Did Marcus tell you what he planned to do with the house? She nodded. What? He said he needed temporary control. Control for what? To settle the old business debt. So he admitted the debt was his? He said it was complicated. Did he say he planned to sell the house? No. Did he say he planned to refinance it? Danielle looked down. Yes. My heart sank. When last month, before my room was emptied. Yes. I felt tears rise in my eyes. So this was planned. I didn't know about the room. You signed the letter. I know. You gave him authority. I thought it was temporary. There is no temporary authority over someone's home. I know that now. I turned away. I needed a moment. The woman standing behind me was my daughter. I loved her. But love did not make what she had done acceptable. I turned back. Where is Marcus now? I don't know. Did he tell you where he was going? No. What did he take from this house? She looked frightened. I don't know. You were here. I was upstairs. While he was searching, did you see him take anything? Danielle hesitated. Then she whispered an envelope. My heart stopped. The white envelope. Yes. Where was it? In Dad's old desk. I looked at Patricia. What did it contain? I don't know. Did Marcus open it? Yes. What did he do? He read it, and he got angry. That caught my attention. What did it say? I don't know. What happened next? He said, "This isn't the original." I felt a chill. The original. Marcus had been searching for the original document. The envelope he'd taken from my desk wasn't enough. And suddenly, I understood why he had gone to the storage unit, why he had taken James's box. He wasn't simply looking for proof of authority. I was searching for the original property documents. Documents that could either help him create a convincing claim or reveal that his entire story was false. Danielle, I said quietly, where is the envelope now? She looked at me. I don't know. Where is Marcus? I don't know. Then what were you trying to tell me? She began crying again. I wanted you to leave. Leave anywhere. Why? Because Marcus said if he couldn't find the original documents, he would make sure you lost the house another way. The room went silent. Patricia's face hardened. What exactly did he say? Danielle looked at her. He said he would make you look incapable of managing your own affairs. I felt my chest tighten. He planned to use my reputation against me. Yes, and you helped him. Danielle nodded through tears. I did. The honesty hurt. But for the first time, it was the truth. I walked toward her. She flinched. I stopped. I am angry with you. I know. I don't know if I can forgive you yet. I understand. But I don't want to lose you. Danielle began crying harder. I don't want to lose you either. Then Patricia's phone rang. She looked at the screen. Her expression changed. What is it I asked? She answered. Hello. She listened. Then her eyes moved toward me. Yes, I understand. She ended the call. What happened? The county records office. My heart began pounding. They found something. What someone recently attempted to file a document concerning your property. I felt the room tilt. Who? Patricia looked at me. Marcus Reed. When this morning? I stared at her. What kind of document? She took a slow breath. A petition claiming you had become unable to manage the property independently. My blood ran cold. Everything suddenly made sense. The questions, the rumors, the missing room, the fake document, the realtor inquiry. Marcus wasn't waiting anymore. He had begun the final move, and this time he wasn't simply trying to control my house. I was trying to convince the world that I couldn't control it myself. I looked at Danielle, then at Patricia, and finally at the empty hallway leading toward my bedroom. For 6 days, I had felt like someone was taking pieces of my life away from me. Now I understood the real target. It wasn't my furniture. It wasn't the brown leather box. It wasn't even the house. It was my voice. And I suddenly knew exactly what I had to protect. For a few seconds, nobody moved. The words Patricia had just spoken seemed to hang in the air. A petition claiming I had become unable to manage my property independently. I had heard those kinds of words before, usually in stories about strangers, usually involving people who had been abandoned by their families. I had never imagined those words could be used against me. And certainly not by someone who had once sat at my kitchen table and called me family. I looked at Patricia. How could he file something like that? He can file a petition, she said carefully. That doesn't mean a court will accept it, but he submitted it. Yes, using what evidence, that is what we're going to find out. I looked at Danielle. She was still crying. Did Marcus tell you he was going to do this? She nodded. When yesterday? Before you texted me, yes. Then why didn't you tell me I was afraid? Afraid of what? That he would know I warned you. I stared at her. And you still let him come into my house? She lowered her head. I thought I could stop him. You couldn't. I know. Her voice was barely audible. I know now. I wanted to be furious. Part of me was. But another part could see something I had missed before. Danielle wasn't behaving like someone who believed she was winning. She looked terrified. She looked trapped. That didn't excuse what she had done, but it told me something important. Marcus had leverage over her. And if I wanted to understand the entire scheme, I needed to know what that leverage was. Danielle, I said, what does Marcus have against you? She looked up. Nothing. That isn't true. She wiped her cheeks. He has my debt records. So he knows I borrowed money. From whom? Private lenders. My heart sank. How much, she told me. It was more than I expected. Why didn't you tell me I was embarrassed? You're my daughter. I know. You could have come to me. I know. She looked at me. I thought Dad would have been disappointed. That broke my heart. Your father would have wanted you to tell the truth. I know. Marcus knew about the debt. Yes. How I don't know. Think. She closed her eyes. After Dad died, I started helping with some of his old business files. I remembered. Danielle had spent months going through James's office after the funeral. At the time, I had been grateful. I hadn't wanted to look at anything. She had told me she was simply organizing things, Now I realized she may have found more than I knew. Did you give Marcus those files? No. Then how did he know I don't know? Patricia interrupted gently. Danielle, did you ever meet with Marcus after your father's death? Yes. How many times I don't remember. Approximately, maybe 6 or 7. My stomach tightened. 6 or 7. She nodded. What did you discuss? Dad's business. Your debts. Yes. My property. Sometimes. What did he tell you? That Dad had left unfinished obligations? He had. I know. But Marcus told you those obligations could become your responsibility. Yes. And he offered to help. Yes. I shook my head. He wasn't helping you. I know. He was using you. I know. And you gave him access to me. Danielle began crying again. I know. The words were almost unbearable, but I had learned something that morning. I could not rebuild anything with my daughter by pretending the damage hadn't happened. So I asked the hardest question. Did you know about the moving company? She looked at me. No. Did you know my bedroom would be emptied? No. Did you authorize it? No. Then why did Marcus have the authority letter I signed something? What I thought it was permission for him to collect Dad's business files. I looked at Patricia. Did you read it? Danielle nodded. Did it mention the house? No. Then Marcus altered the purpose. Yes. I felt a wave of anger. Why didn't you tell me immediately? Because I didn't know what he'd done until afterward. When did you find out? When I came home and saw your room. I stared at her. You saw it. Yes. And you didn't call me. I was terrified. Terrified of Marcus, yes. Why? Danielle looked at Patricia, then back at me. He told me if I went against him, he'd make sure everyone knew about my debts. That isn't enough to justify what you did. I know. But it explains why you were afraid. Yes. I sat down. My anger had not disappeared. But now it had somewhere to go. Marcus. Not because Danielle was innocent. She wasn't. She had made choices. She had handed over information. She had signed documents. She had opened doors. But Marcus had built the entire trap around her weakness, and he had been doing it for years. Patricia pulled out her phone. I need to show you something. She opened an email. It was from the county records office. The attempted filing had been submitted electronically. Attached were several documents. I recognized one immediately. The fake statement I'd found in my desk. My name appeared on it. But there was another document. A letter from a supposed family representative. The wording suggested that Danielle had concerns about my ability to manage my property. I looked at her. You wrote this. She shook her head violently. No, but your name is referenced. I didn't write it. Did you tell Marcus these things? I told him I was worried. What exactly did you say? That you were stressed? Anything else? That you had been forgetting things? My heart sank. You gave him the words. I didn't know he'd use them like this. Patricia looked at me. That is exactly how these schemes work. I hated that sentence, because it was true. A casual concern could become a statement. A statement could become a document. A document could become an accusation. And an accusation could become a legal battle. I looked at the petition again. There was one section titled Supporting Evidence. Under it were 3 names: Evelyn Parker, Danielle Turner, and someone I didn't recognize. I stared at the 3rd name. Who is Walter Green? Patricia's expression changed. I was hoping that name wouldn't appear. Why? Because Walter Green was an accountant who worked with Marcus years ago. Is he still practicing? I don't know. What would he know about me? Probably very little. Then why is he listed as evidence? Patricia looked through the attached documents. He apparently claims to have observed you making financial mistakes. I felt a cold wave move through me. I've never met him. Then his statement may be challenged. What did he claim? Patricia read the document. He says you were confused about financial records, when approximately 8 months ago. That is impossible. Why? Because I didn't meet him. Patricia nodded. That is exactly why we need to verify his statement. I stood. Where is he? I'll find out. No. She looked at me. I want to know. Malika, I want to know who is telling the court that I'm incapable of managing my life. Patricia studied me. Then she nodded. All right. She made a phone call. While she was speaking, I looked around my own living room. I suddenly noticed how many things I had taken for granted. The framed photographs, the old clock, James's favorite chair, the small scratch on the coffee table from when Danielle was 8 years old. This wasn't simply property. This was my life. Someone had decided that because I was an older woman, my voice could be questioned. That because I was grieving, I could be manipulated. That because I trusted my daughter, I could be used. But they had made one mistake. They had assumed I would stay silent. Patricia ended her call. Walter Green has an office downtown. Can we meet him? Yes. Today he's available this afternoon. I nodded. Then my phone rang. The number was unknown. I answered cautiously. Hello? A man's voice spoke. Ms. Turner. Yes, my name is Walter Green. My heart began pounding. How did you get my number? I was given it. By whom? He didn't answer. What do you want? I think you should know that I never signed the statement submitted under my name. Silence. I stood completely still. What I never told anyone, you were incapable of managing your affairs. Then why is your name on the petition? Because someone used an old report I prepared years ago, about whom your late husband's business. I looked at Patricia. She was watching me closely. Walter continued. Your name appeared in that report only because you were listed as James's spouse. Then someone altered it. Yes. Who I don't know. Do you know Marcus Reed? Yes. Did you speak with him recently? Another pause. Yes. When? 2 days ago. What did he ask? I wanted me to confirm that you had been confused about financial matters. My heart raced. And what did you tell him I refused? Then why did he use your name? I don't know. Where are you now? He hesitated. At my office. Stay there. Why? Because I want to meet you. He sounded nervous. Ms. Turner. I don't think that's a good idea. Why? Because Marcus isn't the only person who has been asking questions. My blood ran cold. What do you mean? I think someone else is involved. Who? He lowered his voice. I don't know. The call ended. I stared at the phone. Patricia stepped closer. What did he say? I told her. She looked concerned. This is bigger than Marcus. I thought about James's notebook. The 2 unfamiliar names. The strange people connected to the old business. The mysterious envelope. The fake documents. And the petition. Suddenly, one sentence from James's notebook returned to me. If Marcus ever returns, look at who is standing beside him. I looked at Danielle. She was standing alone. But perhaps she hadn't been the person James was warning me about. Perhaps she had only been the doorway, and someone else had been standing behind her the entire time. Patricia picked up her coat. We need to move quickly. Where to see Walter? I nodded. Then I looked at Danielle. You're coming with us. She looked frightened. Mom, if you want to make this right, You need to tell the truth. She nodded. I will. We walked toward the door. But before I stepped outside, I looked once more at my empty bedroom. For days, I had seen that room as a symbol of what had been taken from me. Now I saw it differently. It had become the first piece of evidence, the first crack in Marcus's story. And perhaps, if I was willing to keep going, it would become the place where his entire plan began to fall apart. I had spent 6 days asking who had signed the moving receipt. Now I was finally asking the more important question. Who had taught Marcus what to do? Walter Green's office was on the 4th floor of an old brick building downtown. By the time we arrived, the sky had turned gray. Rain tapped against the windows as we entered the lobby. I felt strangely calm. Not peaceful, not safe. Just calm, in the way a person becomes calm when there is nothing left to lose by hearing the truth. Patricia walked beside me. Danielle followed several steps behind. She hadn't said much during the drive. Neither had I. We reached the 4th floor and found Walter's office at the end of a narrow hallway. The door was unlocked. Patricia knocked. Mr. Green. No answer. She knocked again. I looked at Danielle. She looked frightened. Then we heard movement inside. The door opened. A man in his late 60s stood there. Gray hair, wire-rimmed glasses, a tired expression. Ms. Turner. Yes. He looked at Patricia. Then Danielle. Come in. His office was small and crowded with old financial records. He closed the door behind us. I wasn't sure you would come. You called me. I know. You said someone else was involved. Walter looked at Patricia. Is she aware of everything? Not yet, Patricia said. Then she needs to be. I sat down. Walter remained standing. I worked with James Turner for nearly 15 years. I know. He trusted me. I know that too. But after he died, Marcus approached me. When, about a year later, what did he want to reconstruct some of James's old business records? Why he claimed there were unresolved financial obligations. There were. Walter nodded. But they weren't what Marcus claimed. My heart tightened. What do you mean? Walter sat down. James had discovered discrepancies in Marcus's accounts. Patricia told me. Walter looked surprised. She did, yes. Then you already know the beginning. What don't I know? Walter folded his hands. The money Marcus claimed James owed him wasn't actually owed. I stared at him. What Marcus had transferred company money into an outside account. His own, an account controlled by a separate company. Why to conceal losses? I looked at Patricia. She nodded. Walter continued. James discovered it and confronted him. Yes. Then Marcus claimed James owed him money. Exactly. My hands tightened. So he created a debt, essentially, and now he's trying to use my house to cover it. Walter nodded. That was the plan. Was his expression changed? He's already moved beyond that. A chill went through me. What do you mean, he isn't trying to recover money anymore? Then what does he want? Control? The words sounded different this time. Not abstract. Not legal. Personal. He wants control over your property because it gives him leverage over several unresolved matters. What matters? Walter looked toward Patricia. Tell her. Patricia took a breath. Marcus's old business liabilities may still be active. I frowned. After 6 years, some claims can remain complicated for a long time. Walter nodded. And Marcus has been trying to reposition himself financially by using my house. Yes. I stared at him. How much is he trying to get? Walter gave me an amount. I felt sick. It was enormous, enough to explain everything. The moving company, the documents, the realtor, the petition, all of it. Marcus believed my home could give him access to enough money to solve a problem he had created years ago. But then Walter said something that changed everything. He isn't acting alone. I looked up. Who is helping him? I don't know the full answer. Then tell me what you do know. Walter hesitated. There's a company. What company? Greenwood Asset Services. The name meant nothing to me. What is it? A consulting firm, owned by Marcus Nome. Then who owns it? Walter looked at me. Ethan Caldwell, the second unfamiliar name from James's notebook. My heart began beating faster. James knew him. Yes. How Ethan worked with Marcus during the final year of the partnership. Patricia immediately reached for James's notebook. She opened it. There it was. Ethan Caldwell. Beside his name was a date. The same year Marcus's financial problems began. I stared at it. Why did James write his name? Walter leaned forward. Because Ethan was the person Marcus used to move money. I felt a cold wave spread through me. So Ethan helped Marcus hide the money. Yes. Then why is he involved now? Because Marcus needs someone who understands financial structures. And he understands property. Yes. Patricia looked at me. That explains the second name. But there was still another name. A third. I remembered James's notebook. There had been two names I didn't recognize. One was Ethan. The other was still a mystery. I asked Walter. Who else worked with Marcus? Walter looked uncomfortable. An attorney. What attorney? Robert Hale. My heart stopped. That was the other name. James had written it down. Patricia flipped through the notebook. There it was. Robert Hale. My hands went cold. Why would James write down his name? Because Robert was the attorney who drafted some of the original agreements. Marcus's attorney. Originally, yes. Is he involved now? Walter nodded slowly. I believe so. Patricia's expression hardened. Do you have proof? Walter looked toward a locked cabinet. Yes. He stood and walked to it. He unlocked the cabinet. Inside were several folders. He pulled out one. This is a copy of an agreement Marcus tried to have James sign. I opened it. The document looked legitimate. Official formatting, legal language, signatures. But then I saw the property clause, my house. Again. It wasn't accidental. Marcus had been trying to attach my home to his business problems for years. But James had refused. Walter handed me another document. This is more recent. I read it. My name appeared again. This time, the document suggested I had voluntarily agreed to allow a family representative to manage the property. I looked at Patricia. This is the same language. Yes. Who drafted it? Walter looked at me. Robert Hale. My heart sank. So, the attorney is involved. Apparently. I felt betrayed by people I had never even met. Then Walter said, There is one more problem. What the petition filed this morning was prepared by Robert Hale. Patricia's eyes narrowed. Are you certain? Yes. Then Marcus isn't improvising. Walter shook his head. He has a legal strategy. I sat back. Everything suddenly became frighteningly clear. Marcus had money problems. Ethan understood financial structures. Robert understood the law. Danielle provided personal information, and I had unknowingly become the target. It was coordinated. That was why Marcus always seemed prepared. He hadn't been acting alone. He had people helping him build the story. A story that said I was confused. A story that said I needed help. A story that said my daughter was acting in my best interest. A story that said my house should be placed under someone else's control. But stories could be destroyed by facts. And I had facts. Original documents, security footage, messages, records, and now witnesses. I looked at Walter. Why are you telling me all this? He lowered his eyes. Because I made a mistake. What mistake? I believed Marcus. Years ago. Yes. And now I know what he is capable of. Why didn't you come forward sooner? He hesitated. Fear. That word hit me. Everyone had been afraid. Danielle, Walter, perhaps even James. Marcus had built his power by making people afraid to challenge him. I understood that now, and I knew fear was exactly what I needed to stop feeding. I reached for Walter's hand. Thank you for telling me. He looked surprised. You don't have to thank me. I do. Then Patricia asked the question I had been avoiding. Walter, do you know where Marcus is right now? Walter shook his head. No. Have you spoken with Robert recently? Yes. When yesterday? What did he say? Walter's face became pale. He asked whether I still had the old business files. What did you tell him, that I had destroyed them? Patricia frowned. Did you? No. I looked at the locked cabinet. That's why they're here. Yes. Then Walter said something that made the room go silent. Robert also asked me whether James had ever created a second property agreement. I looked at Patricia. She slowly shook her head. He was looking for the original. Yes, and he knew it existed. I believe so. My heart began pounding. Then Marcus isn't searching blindly. No, he knows exactly what he wants. Yes. I reached into my purse. I pulled out the brass key. This is what James left for me. Walter stared at it. Where did you get that, Patricia? He looked at her, then back at me. I thought James destroyed that. I froze. What Walter stood. Malika. If that key is still with you, then James left something more important than the property records. What Walter looked terrified. The original evidence. Patricia stepped forward. What evidence? Walter's voice dropped. Proof that Marcus and Robert worked together to create the false debt. My heart stopped, where Walter shook his head. I don't know, but you just said, I know what James told me. What did he tell you? Walter looked directly into my eyes. He told me that if Marcus ever tried to take your house, the evidence would surface. Where I don't know. Then why are you telling me this? Because I think Marcus knows where it is. The room went silent. Then my phone vibrated. A message. Unknown number. I opened it. There was only one sentence. You found the old records. Now find the room James never told you about. My blood ran cold. Patricia looked at me. What does it say? I handed her the phone. She read it. Then she looked at Walter. Who knew we were here? Walter shook his head. No one. I looked at Danielle. She was crying. I didn't tell anyone. I believed her. For the first time, I believed her completely. Because whoever sent that message wasn't asking me to stop. They were challenging me. They wanted me to keep searching. And I suddenly understood why. They knew something I didn't. James had hidden one final secret. Not in the old house. Not in the storage unit. Not in my office. Somewhere else. A room I had never known existed. I looked at Patricia. Where do we start? She looked at the brass key. Your house. My house. Yes. Why? Because James spent 30 years there. She paused. And if he created a secret room, he would have built it somewhere Marcus wouldn't think to look. I thought about my home, the walls, the basement, the attic, the old office, the spaces I had walked past thousands of times. Then I remembered something I hadn't thought about in years. A section of the basement wall that James had always told me not to touch. He had called it unfinished construction. But suddenly, I wasn't sure it had ever been unfinished. I stood. I know where it is. I knew the moment I said it that I had remembered something important. The basement. For years, there had been one section of the wall James never wanted me to touch. It was behind an old wooden shelving unit near the laundry room. Whenever I asked what was behind it, he would smile and say, "Nothing worth worrying about." I had believed him. Now I wasn't so sure. Patricia looked at me. What exactly do you remember the wall? What about it? James always kept a shelf in front of it. Walter leaned forward. Was the wall finished? No. Part of it was covered with old plywood, and he told you it was unfinished? Yes. Walter exchanged a look with Patricia. That may be it. My heart began pounding. You think he built something behind that wall? Possibly, Patricia said. Danielle stood quietly near the door. Mom. I looked at her. What, can I come with you? I hesitated. A few hours earlier, I might have said no. But I had seen something in her face that I couldn't ignore. She wasn't asking because she wanted access to the documents. She was asking because she wanted a chance to help. Fine, I said. Patricia looked at me. We'll all go together. Walter stayed behind. He said he would secure the records in his office and contact Patricia if anyone tried to access them. Before we left, he stopped me. Malika. I turned. If you find something, don't open anything until Patricia is there. I understand. And don't confront Marcus. I won't. Walter looked relieved. Then he said quietly, Your husband was right about one thing. What Marcus always believed people would be too afraid to challenge him. I looked at the brass key in my hand. He was wrong. We drove back to my house. The rain had stopped, but the sky remained heavy and gray. When we entered the house, everything seemed unchanged. Yet I no longer saw it as simply my home. I saw it as a place where James had been preparing for a future he knew I might someday have to face without him. I led them downstairs. The basement smelled faintly of dust and old wood. The laundry machines stood along one wall. An old workbench occupied the corner. And there was the shelving unit, exactly where I remembered it. I stood in front of it. My hands began to tremble. I haven't moved this in years. Patricia nodded. Then let's see what your husband was hiding. Danielle helped me move the shelves. They were heavier than I remembered. Behind them was the old plywood. I ran my fingers across it. There were no obvious hinges, no handle, nothing. Then I noticed a small irregularity near the bottom. A brass-colored circle. I touched it. It moved. My heart jumped. Patricia. She stepped closer. What is it, a lock? I pulled the brass key from my pocket. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. Then I inserted it. The key turned. There was a soft click. The plywood panel shifted inward. Danielle gasped. Behind it was a narrow doorway. I stared into the darkness. James had never lied to me about having a secret room. He had simply never told me about it. Patricia turned on her flashlight. The passage was only a few feet long. At the end was a small room. Inside were shelves, boxes, a desk, and a metal filing cabinet. Everything was covered in a thin layer of dust, but the room was clearly organized. Not abandoned, prepared. I stepped inside. On the desk was a single photograph of James. He was sitting at the same desk. The picture looked several years old. Beside it was a handwritten note. I picked it up. It read, "Malika, if you are reading this, then someone has tried to take control of what belongs to you. Do not be afraid. The truth is already here." My eyes filled with tears. Patricia gently took the note. "Don't touch anything else." I nodded. She photographed the desk, the shelves, and every visible document. Then she opened the first box. Inside were copies of financial statements. The second contained correspondence. The third contained contracts. Then we found a black binder. Patricia opened it carefully. Her expression changed. "What?" She looked at me. "This is everything." I stepped closer. Inside were copies of transfers between Marcus's company and Ethan Caldwell's consulting firm. Dates, amounts, account numbers, correspondence, and a series of emails. One email had been printed and highlighted. It was from Robert Hale. The subject line was collateral arrangement. The message stated that if James refused to restructure the debt, Robert would explore alternative avenues involving the Turner residence. My knees nearly gave out. Patricia caught my arm. "They planned this." "Yes. Years ago." "Yes." I turned another page. There was an internal financial report showing that Marcus had transferred company funds to Ethan. The amount matched the alleged debt Marcus later claimed James owed. I stared at the figures. He created the debt. Yes, and then tried to make James responsible for it. Yes. I felt tears roll down my face. James had spent his final years fighting this, and I had never known. Then Patricia found something else. A signed statement. James had written everything down. His concerns about Marcus. His concerns about Robert. His concerns about Ethan. And finally, his concern about me. One paragraph made me stop. If they cannot obtain the property legally, they may attempt to establish that Malika is incapable of managing it herself. I covered my mouth. It was exactly what was happening now. 6 years later, the same plan, different paperwork. I whispered, "He knew." Patricia nodded. He anticipated it. Then Danielle saw something on the desk. "Mom." I turned. She was pointing toward a small envelope. It had her name on it. Danielle. She stared at it. "I didn't know this existed." I looked at Patricia. She nodded. "You can open it." Danielle's hands shook as she picked it up. Inside was a letter from James. She began reading. Her face changed almost immediately. Tears streamed down her cheeks. "What does it say?" I asked. She couldn't answer. She handed me the letter. I read it. James had written to Danielle years earlier. He told her that he knew she sometimes felt responsible for fixing family problems. He told her that she didn't need to carry his business burdens. Then he wrote, "If anyone ever tells you that helping them means sacrificing your mother's security, walk away." My heart broke. Danielle covered her face. He knew. I put my arm around her. He knew you would be vulnerable to this. I should have listened. You never saw the letter.
I should have known anyway. I looked at her. You made mistakes. I know, but you can still choose what happens next. She looked at me through tears. What do I do? Tell the truth. She nodded. I will. Patricia continued searching the room.
Then she found a small locked drawer. The brass key didn't fit. She tried another key from the filing cabinet. Nothing. Then Danielle spoke. Mom. I turned. She was holding the original moving receipt. I stared at it. Where did you get that?
It was in Marcus's folder. You had it. I found it in the living room earlier. I took it carefully. There it was. The signature. Marcus Reed. But beneath it was something else. A second signature. I had never noticed it before. Robert Hale. I looked at Patricia. He signed it too. Yes, and he was there when my room was emptied, apparently. The implications were enormous. This wasn't just Marcus's operation. The attorney had been physically involved. That meant the moving company wasn't an innocent misunderstanding. It was part of the plan. They had created the appearance that my belongings were being legally transferred, and they had documented it. I suddenly remembered the title of the receipt, Property Removal Authorization. My stomach tightened. Patricia. Yes, is this enough to prove they acted without my permission? It is very strong evidence. Then we can stop them. We can challenge what they filed. But can they still take my house? Not if we act immediately. I looked at the documents. For the first time, I felt hope. Not the fragile hope I had felt when I believed Marcus might explain everything. This was different. This was hope built on facts, evidence, truth. Then my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. Hello? No one spoke. Who is this silence? Then a man's voice. Malika. I knew immediately. Marcus. My entire body went cold. What do you want? You found the room. I looked at Patricia. She signaled me to put the call on speaker. I did. Marcus continued. James always thought he could outsmart me. You won't get my house. He laughed softly. You still don't understand. Then explain it. You think those papers will save you. They will. No. Why? Because the court doesn't care about old business disputes. Patricia stepped closer. Marcus continued. They care about whether you're capable of managing your affairs. I felt my anger rise. You have no right to question my capacity. I don't need the right. His voice became colder. I only need enough people to believe it. I looked at Danielle. She was crying. Marcus said, Your daughter understands. I clenched my jaw. You used her. She made her choices. She was afraid of you. She was afraid of losing everything. I said nothing. Then Marcus made his final mistake. He said, Malika, you should have stayed out of your husband's old business. I felt a strange calm come over me. Marcus. Yes, you made one mistake. What you forgot, that James trusted me. Silence. Then I continued. And you forgot that he prepared for you. He hung up. The room became silent. Patricia looked at me. We need to move now. I nodded. What happens next? We take every document to the proper authorities and challenge the petition. And Marcus, we let the evidence speak. I looked at Danielle. She wiped her tears. I'll tell them everything. I took her hand. Then we'll face it together. Not because what she had done was forgiven. It wasn't. But because truth had finally entered the room.
And once truth enters a family, lies can no longer hide forever. Patricia gathered the documents. As she lifted the final folder, a small piece of paper fell from beneath it. I picked it up. There was one sentence in James's handwriting. The person who signs the receipt is not always the person who owns what was moved. I looked at the moving receipt. Marcus had signed it. Robert had signed it. But neither of them owned my life. Neither of them owned my home. Neither of them owned my future. And tomorrow, they were going to learn that the hard way. The next morning, I woke before sunrise. For the first time in nearly a week, I wasn't afraid of what the day might bring. I was nervous. I was exhausted. I was heartbroken. But I wasn't afraid. The documents were secured. Patricia had already contacted the appropriate authorities and begun the process of challenging the petition against me. Walter had agreed to provide his records. Evelyn had agreed to give a statement about the conversations Danielle had had with her, and Danielle had made a decision. She was going to tell the truth, all of it. We arrived at Patricia's office shortly after 8. Danielle sat beside me in the waiting area. She hadn't slept much. Neither had I. I don't know if they'll believe me, she whispered. They will have to decide based on evidence. But I lied before. Yes. She looked at me. Are you still angry? I took a breath. Yes. She nodded. I understand, but I'm glad you're telling the truth now. Tears filled her eyes. I don't deserve you. I shook my head. Don't say that. Why? Because you're my daughter. That doesn't mean you get to hurt me without consequences, but it also doesn't mean I stop loving you. She looked down. I wish I could undo everything. So do I. But you can't. No. I reached for her hand. You can only decide what you do next. She squeezed my hand. Then Patricia opened the door. Malika, Danielle, we're ready. We entered the conference room. The next several hours were difficult. Danielle explained everything. How Marcus approached her. How he knew about her debts. How he convinced her that James had left unresolved financial obligations. How he asked questions about me, my routines, my accounts, my documents, my property. She explained the letter she had signed. She explained how Marcus used it to access the storage unit. And finally, she explained what happened when she realized he was trying to establish that I was incapable of managing my own affairs. She cried several times, but she kept talking. She didn't minimize anything. She didn't blame me. She didn't blame Patricia. She told the truth. That mattered. Walter provided his records, the financial transfers, the old business documents, the correspondence, the evidence that Marcus had moved money through Ethan Caldwell's company, the documents Robert Hale had drafted, and the old emails showing they had discussed using my home as collateral. The security footage from the storage facility was preserved. The moving receipt was examined. Marcus's signature was there. Robert's signature was there. But mine wasn't. More importantly, there was no valid authorization from me. The petition claiming I was incapable of managing my affairs was challenged with evidence of my financial records, property ownership, legal documents, and statements from people who had known me for years. Evelyn's statement was particularly important. She admitted that Danielle had told her I was becoming forgetful, but she also explained that she had never personally observed anything suggesting I was incapable of managing my affairs. Walter's statement was even stronger. He explained exactly how his old report had been altered and misused, and Patricia presented James's original documents, the originals, the ones Marcus had been searching for, the ones he had never found.
By afternoon, the picture was completely different. What Marcus had presented as a case of a confused older woman needing family assistance was beginning to look like a deliberate attempt to manipulate the legal system. And then came the moment I had been waiting for. Patricia received a call. She listened. Then she looked at me. The petition has been suspended pending further review. I closed my eyes. For several seconds I couldn't speak. Not because everything was over. It wasn't. There would still be investigations. There would still be consequences. There would still be difficult conversations. But the immediate threat had stopped. My house was still mine. My voice was still mine. My life was still mine. I looked at Danielle. She was crying. I reached for her hand. She held mine. Then Patricia received another call. This time, her expression was different. "What happened?" I asked. She hung up. "Marcus and Robert have been contacted regarding the documents, and they're both cooperating with investigators." I almost laughed. "Cooperating? That's what they say." I shook my head. They were never very good at telling the truth. Patricia smiled faintly. "They may have realized the evidence is stronger than their story." That evening, I finally returned home. I stood in the doorway for a long time. The house was quiet. The same house, the same walls, the same photographs. But I felt different. I walked toward my bedroom. It was still empty. For a moment, sadness washed over me. Then Danielle appeared behind me. "I'll help you put everything back." I looked at her. "You don't have to." "I know." She stepped inside. "But I want to." We spent the next several hours rebuilding the room. Not exactly as it had been. Some things were damaged. Some things were missing. Some things would never be replaced. But we put the photographs back on the walls. We moved the chair near the window. We brought in a new dresser. And we placed James's photograph on the nightstand. When we finished, I sat on the edge of the bed. Danielle stood in the doorway. "Mom." "Yes." "Do you think Dad would forgive me?" I looked at his photograph. I think your father believed forgiveness had to come after honesty." She nodded. "Then I have a lot of work to do." "Yes." She smiled sadly. "I know." She started to leave. "Danielle?" She turned. "I love you." Her eyes filled with tears. "I love you too." She closed the door. I sat alone. The room was no longer empty. But the most important thing I had recovered wasn't furniture. It was my sense of self. For years, I had believed protecting a family meant keeping peace. I had mistaken silence for love. I had accepted explanations because I didn't want to believe something ugly could exist inside my own family. But peace built on lies isn't peace, it's surrender. James had understood that. I had known Marcus might come back. He had known someone might try to use my age, my grief, or my trust against me. And he had prepared evidence. But there was something James hadn't been able to prepare for. Me. The woman I would become after losing him. The woman who would finally stop apologizing for protecting herself. The woman who would say no. The woman who would demand proof. The woman who would refuse to let someone else's fear become her future. Several weeks later, the legal situation became clearer. The false petition was dismissed. The documents Marcus and Robert had submitted were investigated. The financial records exposed the old business scheme. Ethan Caldwell's role came under scrutiny as well. The authorities continued examining the financial transfers and related transactions. Marcus could no longer walk into my life pretending to be a helpful family friend. Robert could no longer hide behind professional language. And Danielle began repairing the damage she had caused. She worked with a financial counselor. She took responsibility for her debts. She stopped communicating with Marcus. Most importantly, she stopped hiding. Our relationship didn't magically return to normal. Healing doesn't work that way. There were difficult days. There were moments when I remembered the empty bedroom and felt anger all over again. There were nights when Danielle cried because she couldn't forgive herself. But slowly we began rebuilding trust. Not with promises, with actions. Months later, I stood on my porch one autumn evening. The trees had begun turning gold. A gentle breeze moved through the yard. Danielle brought me a cup of tea, just like Dad used to make, she said. I smiled. She sat beside me. For a while, neither of us spoke. Then she said, "You know what I learned? What family isn't the people who claim they have authority over you." I looked at her. "Then what is family?" She thought for a moment. "People who tell you the truth, even when the truth is hard." I smiled. "That sounds like something your father would say." She smiled too. I think I'm finally learning what he meant. I looked out at the yard. The house was still standing. My bedroom was no longer empty. But I knew now that a home isn't defined by furniture. It isn't defined by a deed. It isn't even defined by blood. A home is the place where you are allowed to be yourself, where your voice matters, where love doesn't require surrender. And sometimes protecting that home means standing alone. Sometimes it means saying no to people you love. Sometimes it means asking difficult questions. And sometimes it means opening the door to a room you never knew existed and discovering that the truth had been waiting there all along. I thought back to the moving receipt. For days I had wondered who had signed it. Marcus had, Robert had, but neither signature had changed the truth. They had moved my belongings. They had tried to move my life. They had tried to move my future into their hands, but they couldn't move me. And that was the one thing they had never understood. I wasn't the helpless woman they had described. I was a woman who had survived grief, a woman who had built a family, a woman who had spent decades making difficult decisions, a woman who had learned late in life, but not too late, that protecting your peace sometimes requires courage. I looked at Danielle. "Tea," she smiled. "Always." We sat together on the porch until the sun disappeared, and for the first time since I had returned home to find my room empty, I didn't think about what had been taken. I thought about what remained: my home, my voice, my dignity, my daughter. And the knowledge that no one gets to decide that you are powerless simply because they believe you are too trusting to fight back. Sometimes the greatest victory isn't getting revenge. It's getting your life back. And sometimes the most powerful answer to betrayal is simply this: you survived. You stood up. And you came home to yourself. Life lesson and emotional message. Looking back, I realized the hardest part of my experience wasn't discovering that people had lied to me. It was accepting that sometimes the people we love can make choices that hurt us deeply. For a long time, I believed protecting my family meant keeping the peace. I thought if I stayed patient, forgiving, and quiet, everything would eventually work itself out. But I learned something very different. Love does not mean allowing someone to control you. Forgiveness does not mean forgetting what happened. And being a good mother, wife, sister, or friend does not mean giving away your voice. There may come a time in your life when someone makes you feel as though you are too old, too tired, too emotional, or too inexperienced to make your own decisions. Please remember this. Your age does not erase your wisdom. Your grief does not erase your strength. And trusting someone once does not mean you have to trust them forever. Sometimes protecting yourself isn't selfish. Sometimes it is necessary. And sometimes saying no is the first step toward finding yourself again. I also learned that healing doesn't happen because someone apologizes. Healing happens when you choose to move forward without allowing what happened to define the rest of your life. I couldn't change what Marcus did. I couldn't erase the choices Danielle made. I couldn't bring James back. But I could decide what happened next, and so can you. If you're watching this and you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted, I want you to know that you are not weak for being hurt. You are not foolish for having loved someone, and you are not too old to begin again. Sometimes the strongest chapter of your life begins after you think your story is already over. So tell me in the comments, what would you have done if you were in Malika's position? Would you have confronted your family immediately, or would you have gathered evidence first? And if you've ever experienced a moment when you had to choose between keeping the peace and standing up for yourself, I'd truly love to hear your story. If this story touched your heart, please leave a comment. Tell me where you're watching from, and subscribe for more emotional family stories about betrayal, courage, forgiveness, and second chances. Thank you for staying with Malika until the very end. And remember, you can lose a house and rebuild it. You can lose possessions and replace